Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm coming to you by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 1441 of the War News stream. And tonight we have very big news. We have seen that U.S. forces have destroyed an Iranian drone today targeting the USS Lincoln aircraft carrier. We've also seen, in addition to that, Iran's attempted a hijacking of a U.S. tanker, a part of the U.S. Navy's tanker program. And also, Russia is now panicking as missiles have triggered a massive blackout across several different border regions. And we have massive news, and it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 48 hours of news from around the world, but more importantly, the past 24 hours of news from around the world, as we've been able to get significant breaking news over the past 24 hours of major developments within the Middle East, Eastern Europe, East Asia, the Americas, and also Western Africa, which goes against the entire thing of everything's going off in the East. But nevertheless, we have been able to hear absolutely major news over the past 24 hours, with the Islamic Republic of Iran attempting to conduct an armed attack and hijacking on a U.S. tanker in the area of the Strait of Hormuz. We have been able to hear earlier on in the day that the U.S. tanker is actually a part of the strategic support forces of the United States Navy, with 6 Iranian fast attack boats arriving near to the area of the vessel and threatening to conduct an armed attack unless the vessel diverted into Iranian waters and allowed itself to be boarded and seized by the Islamic Republic of Iran's Navy. A U.S. Early Bird class guided missile destroyer then arrived in the area, confronting the Iranian Navy and escorting the ship out of the Strait of Hormuz, but showing a threatened attack and an attempted attack and hijacking on a U.S. tanker earlier in the day. Meanwhile, the United States carrier group Abraham Lincoln has actually conducted an armed attack on an Iranian drone, a Shahed 129, which attempted to enter the area of the carrier strike group's international water exclusion zone earlier today. According to information provided by US CENTCOM and the Iranians, it appears that the Shahed 129 was directly fired upon by an F-35C from one of the carrier squadrons on board the USS Abraham Lincoln, leading to the complete loss of the drone and an open statement by the US CENTCOM command that any continued threats of harassment and armed attacks by the Islamic Republic of Iran against the USS Abraham Lincoln will be met with a full force by the carrier group and also the surrounding US support forces within the area. Meanwhile, the United States is still flying in even larger amounts of support and air defenses into the area through major airlifts that have been ongoing over the past day. The Islamic Republic of Iran has also gotten us completely correct, at least for their analysis, and has already stated that they will most likely, if not guaranteed, will be backing out of the supposed talks that were supposed to happen between the United States and the Islamic Republic of Iran in Ankara this Friday, and have also stated that they will be looking to try and attack and kill every single U.S. service member within the area of the Middle East, and that they'll also be saying a death prayer for every single U.S. citizen within the United States of America and around the world, and they wish nothing but harm on every single group that calls themselves an American citizen, whether armed or unarmed, in the service of the Republic. The Islamic Republic of Iran has also continued more 747 flights to the area of Urumqi within western China in the Xinjiang province, as it appears that they will be getting additional material support from the People's Republic of China. The United States has also seen that the Islamic Republic of Iran is continuing to try and bolster its forces within the region, especially those of its terrorist forces, as Hezbollah within southern Lebanon, according to Israeli intelligence, appears to be poising itself for some form of armed support to the Islamic Republic of Iran if war breaks out. This has led to the state of Israel requesting that the United States of America gives them some form of a diplomatic green light for them to go ahead and start conducting preemptive strikes against southern Lebanon and the Islamic Republic of Iran due to the fact that it appears that war is a guaranteed inevitable certainty at this point in time. Meanwhile, in eastern China, we have also been able to hear that the KMT, the Kuomintang, which is a political party of the island of Taiwan, has actually hosted a joint discussion with the Chinese Communist Party today on a mainland conference, speaking that Taiwanese sovereignty should be considered illegal and should also lead to an invasion by the Chinese Communist Party into the island of Taiwan. Once again, showing that the KMT is largely trying to align itself in favor with the CCP, so that way if the Chinese invade the island of Taiwan, the KMT may become the de facto government of the semi-autonomous region that'll exist on the island most likely for the next several decades. Outside of that, we have also been able to hear that the U.S. has sent a small amount of forces into Nigeria, apparently to deal with the ongoing situation within northern Nigeria. At the exact same time, the USS George H.W. Bush is now outbound from the coast of the United States of America, and after leaving the Norfolk Naval Yard just several weeks ago, and then apparently taking a journey down the southern Atlantic coast of the United States of America, we have now heard that is apparently outbound into the greater area of the North Atlantic Ocean, for reasons that appear to be a little bit unclear for now, but also most likely pertain to the situation in Iran. Meanwhile, Germany and Poland have also announced that they have been able to see clear signs of sabotage and spying conducted by members of the Russian FSB within their armed forces and governments, as Germany has announced that a brand new Corvette was actually sabotaged with several hundred pounds of metal shavings poured into the transmission and also engine components of a brand new Corvette that was to be decommissioned incredibly soon, which, if underway and unfound, would have led to complete engine destruction of the Corvette. Meanwhile, the Polish have also arrested a possible spy that was heavily involved in the Polish Ministry of Defense years prior and appears to still be possibly providing information to the Russian Federation. We have also heard that a drone fell onto a Polish air base just north of Warsaw earlier in the day, and the Polish Air Force also had to mobilize their air force and scramble them due to the ongoing Russian drone attacks that were conducted in Ukraine. The Russians appear to have possibly violated the ceasefire that the United States supposedly was able to get the Russians to agree to today, as it appears that major attacks were once again conducted on Ukrainian energy infrastructure and the city of Kyiv at large. The President of the United States states that the ceasefire has already ended, but according to all public information that we could find, it appears that we were only about 3 to 4 days into the ceasefire during the time that the Russian Federation conducted this attack. The Ukrainians are also stating that according to their information, it does appear that the Russians have clearly violated the ceasefire, and the Russian Federation is simply running interference, saying anything and everything in between. Also, the Russians have stated that if the United States attempts to build up any further forces within Greenland, the Russians will have to react and will have to conduct a full-scale war against the United States of America for trying to build up any additional forces inside of Greenland. great friends and all, the Russians. Anyways, the Ukrainians have also returned in kind the Russian Federation's attack on their energy infrastructure overnight by completely laying waste to 3 entire oblasts of the Russian Federation along Ukraine's borders, with the Bryansk, Kursk, and Belgorod oblasts all suffering near complete blackouts in the entirety of the territorial areas that those oblasts consume. It appears that this is the largest energy blackout in terms of land volume and citizenry in Russia affected over the entirety of the war, and is also showing that the Ukrainians pose a significant strike capability into Russia that appears to be far more devastating than that of the Russians on Ukraine's energy infrastructure. The Ukrainians have also been able to hold the line today, inflicting significant casualties onto the Russian Federation armed forces and generally stopping any further advances. And we also have one incredibly large piece of news that the state of Ukraine, using a MEM-104 Patriot surface-to-air missile defense system, was able to successfully intercept and destroy a Zircon hypersonic missile, which is a full-on hypersonic missile, on film today over Kyiv, which is tremendous news.
That's a shame right there. That's a big blow to the ego for Russia that their hypersonic can get shot down by a Patriot system. That's a hell of a blow.
It is one hell of a blow, and I've heard that the Russians are apparently getting quite afraid of that, considering that even a Patriot can defeat a hypersonic missile. But nevertheless, folks, our news summary was fairly long, but chock full of information, and of course, we have to make sure to get through all of this news, including the smaller stories that we weren't really able to cover in our summary, starting with our largest stories first, and then working our way on down into the smaller stories throughout the night. And so, moving us on into the first and largest story that we've been able to hear from the day, we are going to be moving into the area of the Northern Arabian Sea. While some analysts have stated that the USS Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group was actually moving out of the area of the Northern Arabian Sea and further on towards the area of the Indian Ocean due to the supposed decreasing of tensions between the United States and Iran, that did not appear to be accurate earlier in the day, as we did get to see on Flight Radar 24 that another U.S. Navy CMV-22B Osprey had taken off from the area of the Duqm airfield inside of Oman and had apparently flown out to the carrier to conduct some form of a supply replenishment and then flew back to Duqm just a little while later. This did confirm that the USS Abraham Lincoln was still within the area of the Northern Arabian Sea as of the early hours of this morning, quite literally the break of dawn here in the United States of America, and that the USS Abraham Lincoln appeared to have no intention to leave the area, unlike some experts and analysts were attempting to claim. This has led the Islamic Republic of Iran to try and leverage the situation more so into their favor. After that situation had been confirmed that the USS Abraham Lincoln was still within the area of the Northern Arabian Sea, later on in the day, just hours later, a U.S. tanker that was affiliated with the United States Navy support forces attempted to pass through the area of the Strait of Hormuz. The Strait of Hormuz is a bottleneck within this area of the Arabian Sea, or the Persian Gulf, if you want to call it that. And this U.S. tanker was actually transiting out of the Persian Gulf and on into the Gulf of Oman and into the Greater Ocean. According to information that we were able to hear from US CENTCOM, 6 Iranian speedboats that are, of course, a part of the Iranian Navy swarmed the vessel, surrounded it, and then demanded to be able to board and seize the vessel under the threat that if the U.S. tanker did not comply, they would attack the vessel and then forcibly board the ship to take it into Iranian waters. A U.S. guided missile destroyer, an Arleigh Burke class, highly likely from the USS Abraham Lincoln's Carrier Strike Group, responded into the area immediately and conducted an armed standoff with the speedboats of the Iranian Navy, and then escorted the vessel out of the waters of the Strait of Hormuz and on into the Northern Arabian Sea. This situation was incredibly close to becoming an armed standoff or a hostage situation, depending on how it was going to go. There has been a dozen or so instances of the Islamic Republic of Iran over the time of our news coverage here on the channel, seizing vessels and oil tankers of international countries and holding the vessel and the crew hostage within the Islamic Republic of Iran. These sorts of tactics are highly common by the Iranians, which operate as a terrorist state, in the hopes that holding these citizens hostage by the dozens, as well as a significant financial asset of a foreign country, will be able to get them some form of concessions in a negotiation by that country that they have targeted. They have done this primarily, usually to the United Kingdom, and also a couple of other countries in the past, which they believe they might be able to was squeezed for some form of concessions or some form of an award or pretty much a ransom for the release of the hostages and the vessel. It appears that today...
It's just why would Iran, in the midst of trying to have peace talks with U.S. officials, and also knowing that the U.S. Navy is literally beating right down their doorstep, why would they choose to try to seize a U.S. oil tanker in the midst of that? And we'll get to in just a second, but not just any U.S. oil tanker. It's one that's a part of the U.S. Navy's oil tanker program, which is literally protected by the U.S. Navy. I don't even understand why they would do that unless they were just totally ignorant to the fact that it was protected by the U.S. Navy.
I think it may have been a deliberate action, and we were able to hear that this vessel, which is once again a part of the U.S. Navy's tanker security program, did not cross into Iran's international waters and remained within international seas, according to the maritime risk management group Vanguard. It seems as though this attempt today was a direct Iranian attempt to not only provoke the United States of America, but to also try and take a U.S.-flagged tanker that is generally a part of the U.S. Navy's tanker security program, which would conduct resupplies and refuelings to the Navy in the midst of an emergency situation in wartime, was attempted to be boarded and threatened with an armed attack today by what is basically a glorified speedboat. That's one of them right there.
Yeah, well, it's equipped with 50 cals. Like 6 of these gunboats with 50 cals on them, and they just literally swarmed the tanker with these gunboats right here and said, "Pull over and stop the engines." It's like, what makes you think they're going to do that? Obviously, they're not going to stop the engines and be boarded. They literally have their security team within like arm's reach. The U.S. Navy literally showed up within the hour. So that didn't work whatsoever. And it's not like they were going to actually fire on the U.S. tanker. That would have literally started a war right then and there because the U.S. Navy was within the vicinity. So, I mean, the stupidity is off the charts with this. I don't even understand it.
Oh, by the way, Matthew, you're kind of underplaying the firepower of this boat a great deal, and I have to say that that is absolutely unwarranted for you to do, to disgrace the Islamic Republic of Iran this way. You forgot that while they have the Dishka on the front of the boat, you also forgot that they have the bottle rocket launcher right above the cab of the boat, right there.
I forgot all about that, the bottle rockets. You got to watch out for those. Those are much more deadly than 50 cal.
I mean, that's pretty tricky right there. I mean, you know, do not piss off the Iranians, folks. Otherwise, you might get tickled by the 50 cal, and then they might fire off some bottle rockets at you. You know, I mean, that's a pretty big risk. And I mean, that really does escalate the firepower of these little boats. So 6 of these surrounded the area of the tanker in the midst of international waters, mind you all, and then the United States Navy responded with one of these, which is an early Bird-class guided missile destroyer, which basically at that point overpowered the Iranians quite a significant amount. I mean, the 127mm main gun could literally blast one to smithereens in a single shot. So then the Iranians backed off.
Also, by the way, Brian in the live chat, he pointed something out here. I think Iran might be confused because we do know that Iran is panicking, by the way, because naturally, if you're Iran and you have a pitiful military force, granted, they're a little bit more powerful than Venezuela, but they're still not formidable compared to the United States. When you see all this U.S. naval assets pouring into the region, you see all the overwhelming air superiority also flowing into the region, naturally you get scared. And I guess they got confused, and then when they thought about gunboat diplomacy, they took it too literally. They literally sent out gunboats to try to do diplomacy, but that only works if you're the larger power, the more powerful nation against a smaller nation. That doesn't work vice versa. So I think they got a little mixed up.
You see, the Iranians, though, Matthew, I think they did get messed up because the Iranians are not native speakers, you see, of the English language. So when they hear gunboat diplomacy, it translates quite literally into a gunboat. So then they thought if they whipped out some boats with some guns on them, that might start winning them over the situation. What they don't realize, though, is that gunboat diplomacy is a euphemism for sending your largest and most powerful ships out into the ocean to go threaten someone else. Like, you know, one of these. Not one of these. Very big difference in between the two. Feel like that was probably lost in translation. And it also appears that the Iranians realized that this wasn't going to be necessarily a winning fight against an early Bird-class destroyer once it arrived in the area. And from what we know, while the Iranians tried to save some face and keep the motorboats in the area, the Arleigh Burke was able to escort our tanker out of the Strait of Hormuz and into the Arabian Sea earlier on in the day, which then generally avoided the situation altogether. But if the Arleigh Burke had not arrived, the situation could have gone very differently. And this ship most likely likely is under pretty stringent orders, considering that it's a part of the US's tanker security program, to not allow itself to be boarded or seized by the Islamic Republic of Iran, meaning that that probably would have turned into a direct Iranian attack on a U.S. Oil tanker within the Strait of Hormuz if the early berth had not arrived. So the Iranians tried to save face later in the day, just a couple hours after this, by flying out a Shahed 129 drone into the Arabian Sea to go and try and have a little look at the USS Abraham Lincoln. A Shahed 129 is not really that big of a drone, but I'll make sure to go and show you all this one here, because it is important that we point it out. Basically, it's Iran's version of a Reaper or a Predator drone. It's just that it looks a lot worse, and they also painted it with this absolutely terrible-looking tan. But it can carry air-to-ground missiles, like these Hellfire ripoffs that they have here on the pylons of this drone. They sent out one of these to go and take a look at the Abraham Lincoln, and from what we have heard, according to CENTCOM's published statements, this drone then conducted a rapid flight path in a direct beeline right towards the USS Abraham Lincoln and directly through the security zone that is created around an aircraft carrier. This is actually something that's a little bit important to note when we talk about the USS Abraham Lincoln, is that a single carrier like the Abraham Lincoln never sails alone. The Lincoln is always accompanied by at least 3 Arleigh Burke-class destroyers, which in this instance it was. And these destroyers spread out by several dozen, well, sometimes several dozen nautical miles, or even just a little around a dozen nautical miles in pretty much a triangle around the ship, and they create an air defense perimeter around it. But before we get on into the rest of the summary of the major development that happened in the area today, we actually do have breaking news coming out at this moment. And so, Matthew, what do we got?
Okay, so I hate to jump us out of the Iran news segment for a second, because obviously this is major news, but we currently have an ongoing emergency happening right this second. A U.S. Air Force F-35 is currently squawking 7,700, which means it's having an emergency right now, right off the coast of Taiwan. So we're currently watching this on flight radar. It's right there. It's squawking 7,700 right here. You can see it apparently took off, or it says San Diego. I'm not sure really where it's heading, but it looks like it's near perhaps Okinawa, I think, is where it's currently near, and it's right off the way from Taiwan. So I'm not really sure what's going on with this thing right now. That's a little bit interesting, which does indicate it's having an emergency, but we don't know exactly what type of emergency this aircraft is having. So it's a new aircraft, obviously F-35, it's a pretty top-of-the-line aircraft, so not totally sure. But Enforcer, what do you think this could be?
I would say that it's a high likelihood that this thing is either suffering from an engine malfunction, or it may actually be suffering from critically low fuel. It looks as though that the information from the transponder is correct, as it was pinged earlier in the day for a brief moment at the Miramar Air Force Base just north of San Diego. So it most likely has been conducting a pretty significantly long transit across the Pacific to be able to make it most likely to the Okinawa Air Station, which is Kadena Air Force Base. It may have gotten several in-air refuelings along the way, and at this point it's running critically low on fuel, and that's why it squawked to 7,700 to be able to declare a distress and have the airspace cleared out for it so we can get prioritized for landing. Another likely option is that it may have had an engine malfunction, to where the engine has been running for such an extended period of time while transiting the Pacific that its engine may start to suffer some sort of overheating or some sort of a malfunction, which has been alerted to the pilot, and since he was close to Okinawa, he's now squawked to 7,700 to try and land the aircraft before the engine completely gives out. It could be either one of those two, but it's highly likely those two.
Interesting. And also, by the way, this aircraft might have already landed, by the way, because it looks like it's currently on a predictive flight path of what we're seeing here on flight radar. So it's possible that it could have already landed. In fact, I would say it's very possible, probably likely that it's landed already, probably on the island. So that is interesting, though. But for an F-35 to have a problem like that, I don't really see too many F-35s squawking 7,700 quite often. So that is a bit of a situation. So hopefully they landed safely.
That is a really interesting situation. I saw some people saying there's no way that the U.S. logistically would allow an F-35 like this to run low on fuel. That's true. That's really the reason why that's a more unlikely option, is that it's running wildly low on fuel. But there's also a pretty significant option here of a couple of other factors. It could have been refueled because something that's incredibly important to remember is that aircraft rarely ever land with full fuel loads. It causes a great deal of stress on the landing gear, especially landing and touching down with that sort of of weight inside of an aircraft. So usually aircraft generally try and burn down as much fuel as they can to be as light as possible for landing, or they can even dump fuel, which is not really done a lot on military aircraft, but is done usually in civilian aviation, from what I know. So that could be the reason why we're seeing that the situation has happened at the moment, is that it was planned out that it should be running out of fuel by the time it gets to Kadena, and now that it's probably been loitering for a little while waiting for other F-35s to land, this one may be running critically low on fuel, and that's why it's declared an emergency. Another high likelihood, and this is the most likely option, is that some form of mechanical failure on board the aircraft to where the F-35 has most likely started to have an overheating engine or some other form of a malfunction on board the aircraft, and that's why it's going to be forced to land at Kadena, and it's declared an emergency to be able to do that faster than the other F-35s that may also be in holding patterns near Okinawa and awaiting clearance to land at Kadena. So it could be any one of those options at the moment, but we'll keep an eye on this situation, but it's highly unlikely we'll get any updates, folks, because it does appear that it did turn off its transponder, and right now on Flight Radar 24, it's on a predictive flight path, meaning that this isn't even where it's at the moment. It's most likely taking a right turn to align itself to the runways at Kadena, and we'll be most likely not getting any more updates on this on stream, at least for now. We might hear an update, though, tomorrow from Indo-PACOM, letting us know what happened with this, but that's also slightly unlikely, considering that this isn't a major incident. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least at the moment, but we are going to be getting back into our major news coverage. Speaking of F-35 Lightnings, we're going to be moving our way back into the Northern Arabian Sea, as we were able to hear that Shahed 129 that was getting incredibly close to the carrier strike group earlier today actually took a beeline flight path straight through the carrier's detection and air defense perimeter and right at the carrier. This was believed to be incredibly dangerous, and for this reason, the U.S. Navy actually scrambled and sent off a couple of F-35Cs from the deck to be able to intercept this drone and try and turn it around. Then later on, it was heard that Iran had lost the drone near to the area of the USS Abraham Lincoln carrier strike group, and the Iranians didn't know exactly why at the moment. They actually stated way early in the day that it was under investigation, and they were believing that the drone was generally okay, but it might have just run into some form of connection issues with their operators. Turns out later, the Iranians stated that the drone was most likely shot down by the United States Navy, and then we were able to confirm it was shot down by the United States Navy. According to information that we were able to get, an F-35C from the USS Abraham Lincoln intercepted and shot down the drone. We don't know with what type of missile. It was either an AIM-9 or an AIM-120, possibly even an AIM-260, although that's highly unlikely. And according to a statement from CENTCOM, they say the following: CENTCOM forces are operating at the highest level of professionalism and ensuring the safety of U.S. personnel, ships, and aircraft in the Middle East. Continued Iranian harassment and threats in international waters and airspace will not be tolerated, largely insinuating that the drone had clearly been shot down. Iran's unnecessary aggression near U.S. forces, regional partners, and commercial vessels increases the risk of collision, miscalculation, and regional destabilization, according to the CENTCOM spokesperson. So we have been able to confirm that the United States took clear armed action today against the Islamic Republic of Iran and did shoot down a Shahed 129 drone that violated the carrier's air defense perimeter around the carrier strike group. This is a pretty interesting sort of a development, to say the least, and it is the first instance of armed action that we've been able to confirm, and as far as this year, between the United States of America and the Islamic Republic of Iran in direct action. A lot of people are wondering, what was the Shahed 129 going to do? What was it trying to get near to the USS Abraham Lincoln to do? Was it going to try and attack it with these bottle rockets? Was it going to try and take a look at it with bottle rockets possibly attached under the pylons? Or was it trying to just test responses, and then they ended up testing the responses a little bit too good? And Matthew, what are people thinking about that? And what are you thinking about that as well?
Okay, so a very important distinction right now with this drone situation is apparently the U.S. carrier tried to warn off the drone. They tried to tell the Iranians to turn away and not to come any closer to the carrier, but according to reports, the Iranians totally disregarded that and flew it straight toward the carrier. So apparently they were going to do something. They were either going to surveil it or attack the carrier. So what do you think Iran was really trying to do before it got shot down? 40% said Iran was simply trying to surveil the USS Lincoln carrier, carrier, while 34% said they were merely testing the response of U.S. forces, and 20% said Iran was likely going to attack the carrier if it got close enough. And I really doubt that Iran would attack the carrier. That would be highly stupid. And even though the Iranians are operating with very little logic in mind right now, I don't think they're ready for that. So they were probably going to surveil it. It was also probably symbolic as well. They wanted to get footage right above the carrier so that way they could play it on their propaganda videos. But it turns out they didn't get their footage. And in fact, they lost one of their rinky-dink drones that splashed down into the sea. So that didn't work out too well. And what else could they expect? You can't fly a drone over a carrier. It's going to get shot down. So I'm with the 39%. They were simply trying to surveil, and they surveilled so well, they got a view of the underwater situation. But Enforcer, what say you?
Man, they were watching that camera and they went, wow, look at that frame. Like, sir, we lost connection. Yeah, but look at that frame. That looks like an AIM-120. Like, in there, like, wow, that's really cool.
No, man, they saw that underwater view and they saw that whale and they're like, huh, that's interesting. That doesn't look like the carrier. What is this? It's like you're looking probably at a whale or a fish. That thing's underwater at this point.
Man, they sat there and said, huh, do whales fly? Pull up the thesaurus. Like, they were like, go take a look at it. But the USS Abraham Lincoln most likely was not going to be attacked, folks. It's highly unlikely that that was the Iranian plan. But there is an air defense perimeter around the carrier that generally is not allowed to be violated except for in very rare instances, which we've seen the Iranians do before, but that's generally by the benevolence of the rules of engagement that the carrier strike group has been given to basically fire under no circumstances, and that's why the Iranian drones are able to fly basically right over a carrier at some points. But currently right now, with the tensions being high, the standing rules of engagement for the USS Abraham Lincoln's carrier strike group is to most likely not allow any Iranian drones within close proximity of the Lincoln, and if they pass through the air defense perimeter's border, they are to be engaged and shot down if they do not turn around. That's most likely the standing orders at the moment. And the USS Abraham Lincoln is not weakly armed. I mean, it's not a cruiser, at least in terms of direct firepower. It's not going to have that sort of firepower, but the USS Abraham Lincoln does have two Sea-Whiz air defense systems on board and two I believe it's Sea Sparrow systems on board as well, which are generally all short-range air defense systems that are its last line of defense if the rest of the carrier strike group isn't able to defend the carrier from an anti-ship or an air-based attack. So the USS Abraham Lincoln would have been able to deal with any sort of an attempted attack that a Shahed 129 would have tried to throw at it, so it's highly unlikely that the Iranians had the idea of launching 4 Hellfires at a carrier, and that would be it. They would most likely all get shot down pretty easily, and then they'd also shoot down the drone, and then that would give the United States complete justification to be able to start obliterating the Iranians any day now. So that's highly unlikely. It most likely was trying to conduct surveillance, but due to the standing orders, it was considered to be a high threat to the carrier group, and so an F-35 went up and shot it down. That seems to be our most likely sort of an explanation for what happened today so far, and I gotta say, it's kind of wild to me that they sent up an F-35, because if I'm not mistaken, and let me check what Wikipedia has here, yeah, they only have one air squadron that operates the F-35C. It would have been more likely for them to send up a Super Hornet if we're just talking about statistical probability, because out of their 4 multi-role fighter squadrons, only one of them operates the F-35C. The other 3 still operate the Super Hornet. So I guess they took the deliberate decision to send up their best aircraft, which is the F-35C, to go blast this thing to make an example out of it for the Iranians, just in case that they're trying to send another one into the air defense perimeter at some point in the future. But still...
Also, by the way, one visual said in the live, Jay, said, do we have any video from the drone if used for propaganda? At the moment, it sounds like the first drone that was shot down, the one we're talking about, that one was not recoverable. So I don't think they got any video from it, but they did dispatch a second drone after that one got shot down, and the Iranians are claiming that they got footage that they're going to be releasing in propaganda videos in the days to come. So if there is video, it should come out in the next few days. If you don't see it, that would indicate they probably didn't get close enough to actually film the carrier. So we'll find out in a couple of days when they release it.
Yeah, I would have to say we'll definitely know probably in a couple of days once they release the information. But it is fairly clear at the moment that the United States has taken its first armed action against Iranian aircraft in the entirety of the rising tensions, which is starting to make it fairly clear that we are on the very cusp of going to war with Iran, and also the standing rules of engagement give us an indication that the U.S. is considering a war with Iran highly likely, or the fact that the Iranians might conduct preemptive attacks on U.S. forces highly likely as well, and that's why it wasn't allowed near to the carrier strike group. But moving on from that, though, and on out of the area, we have been able to hear some other news that has generally vindicated our analysis once again here on the channel. Many of y'all will remember that some members of the office of the President of the United States has been making some very big statements lately about the potential of making a deal with Iran, because we all know that deal making is what we live for here in this country. But before we move on into that news, though, because that's really going to be something here in a minute, and something that we told y'all was going to happen. Before we get on into that, though, I do want to see what y'all are thinking right now about that U.S. oil tanker that was being threatened to be seized in the international waters of the Strait of Hormuz earlier today. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about that as well?
Okay, so now that we saw that today at least 6 Iranian gunboats armed to the teeth with 50 caliber machine guns in the bow attempted to seize a U.S. oil tanker, which was a part of the U.S. tanker security program, which is quite ironic. The U.S. Navy showed up immediately and intervened, and the gunboats decided it would probably be good to go home and take a rest. So what is Iran doing? 49% said they're trying to take hostages, and that's what they were trying to seize the tanker for, while 41% said they're trying to test U.S. resolve, and 4% said they're trying to steal the oil. And I'll be honest with you folks, for once, I am kind of speechless. I'm really not sure what the Iranians were trying to do with this. It doesn't make any sense because they know the Navy's in the region, so they're not going to be able to take the tanker. It's going to start a war. They're not going to be able to take hostages because of that. And also, what's the point of testing U.S. resolve? They know that we're armed to the teeth. So, I mean, unless they're trying to get fired upon just to see how it feels to get fired at, I'm not sure what they're doing. So, I don't really have a clue, to be honest. It seemed like not even really a desperate move. It just seemed like a confusing, like illogical step to take. So I'm unsure. I'm with the 6%. But Enforcer, what say you?
It sounded like a very bad attempt at trying to take some hostages, because whenever the Iranians get in a squeeze, they like to take hostages. That's basically their go-to move. We've seen that conducted against the British in the past when Iran and Britain were getting into some rising tensions back into the late 2010s. The Iranians actually seized and held hostage a great deal of British vessels and British crew members from those vessels in an attempt to try and get some leverage over the British in negotiations, either to lessen the torture of the prisoners or to allow for some form of ransom to be paid to the Iranians, or some sort of ransom in terms of concessions for the hostages to be released. I have a feeling that that's what they were trying to do today, and they probably strategically picked out this vessel considering that the ship was a part of the U.S. Navy's security program. It means that this vessel has a little bit more significance, especially to the sea lift capabilities of the Navy, and for that reason, we did see that they tried to target that group in particular, or this vessel in particular, to not only be able to take the crew members of the ship hostage and hold them for ransom in possible U.S. negotiations, but to also be able to hold the ship hostage as well for its eventual release due to some form of concessions or ransom being paid by the United States. So I would have a feeling that that was probably the highly likely option, but really stupidly planned out considering that the U.S. Navy was close nearby and able to respond. And not only that, the vessel was generally an auxiliary, or supposed to be a wartime auxiliary of the U.S. Navy. So that whole deal was incredibly poorly planned out. Probably one of the most poorly planned out attempts at boarding and taking a ship hostage that I've ever seen by the Houthis or Iran, or anybody for that matter, to be entirely frank. But speaking of that, it appears that the Iranians have done something that we expected to a T. And Matthew, please get the poll ready for the whole negotiations part of deals, because we've got to get to that. It's a very big thing that happened today, folks. It's something that shocked some, didn't shock us, because we told you all this was coming on Sunday. The Iranians have made the statement today that they are going to possibly, highly likely, pull out of negotiations with the United States of America.
Oh, no. It can't be.
Can you believe it, folks? Can you believe it? A terrorist state using negotiations as nothing more than an attempt to buy themselves some time, never legitimately looking to negotiate, never legitimately trying to find a way to find common ground with the United States. They just wanted to buy themselves a little bit of time. No way. It's like I told you all this on Sunday. I remember we ran a poll on this whole deal about the Iranians negotiating with the United States, and I said, there's no way in hell that they would negotiate with the United States. They just know that saying the word negotiations or deal making around the president is like jingling your keys in front of a dog or a cat and it wants to go for a walk, and they were going to do this to try and trick the president, like everyone does, into trying to negotiate with absolutely no attempt to actually want to negotiate. And we had plenty of people in the chat that last time we were on air on Sunday, saying that we were just deriding the president. There was no way that that could actually be the case, and the president clearly knows more than we do. The Iranians aren't pulling him along because the Iranians truly trust the president and love him, and that's why they wanted to talk to him. You know, that's clearly why they wanted to dismantle this nuclear program that they've been working on for 30 years at this point, just about, and that's also why they would completely give up funding Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthis and everything, just because they like the president. Obviously, I mean, who in the world would ever think otherwise? And the little old enforcers here who only have our brains to work with, you know, which is something that others don't have, clearly are wrong because the president knows more than us. Well, turns out 48 hours later we were proven right, and it appears that they were using it as an attempt to distract from the U.S. trying to strike them quickly, and we're just trying to buy a little bit more time. Now, I will tell you all this. This is going to happen again. If the Iranians have learned anything from how the Russians operate, what the Iranians do is that they're going to hardline here over the next few days and probably say, we will do nothing for America, debt to America. And then in about a week, they'll probably go, I think making a deal would be a good thing. Don't we like deals? Don't we like deals? Jingle, jingle, jingle. We love deals. Jingle, jingle, jingle. Let's make a deal. And then they'll do that again, which will completely stop U.S. military planning against them once more. And then we'll go, we're talking in Ankara. And then they'll back out of that one right at the last minute before the talks are supposed to happen. It's probably going to do that again, a second time.
It's really interesting, isn't it, how they're using the exact same playbook that Vladimir Putin's using to stall for time? Because, I mean, it's clear as a bell, like, for example, talking about Russia, that Putin doesn't want peace at all. In fact, he just breached a ceasefire that was negotiated by the U.S. And now Iran, they haven't even come to a ceasefire or a deal or anything. They're just sitting here literally sending out gunboats to attack our tankers. They're sending drones at our carriers. And in the meantime, they do keep doing the exact same tactic that Putin's doing by saying, let's make a deal. And we're still stalling. So at this point, either the Iranians are stalling for time or the U.S. is stalling for time, and we're simply yapping it up so that way we can get more air defense into the region. One or the other. There's a lot of games being played here, like on every side, but it's hard to separate the game from actual misinterpretation by the United States officials because they do fall for the whole deal talk. Like, that's not just saying that. They have fallen for that historically over time. Like, they really do fall into that trap, and it's hard to separate the two.
Man, I gotta say, it's really something else. And I guess we'll probably see, folks, that the Iranians exploit this weakness here of just mentioning deal making, probably for a little while more, and they'll be able to get away with not getting bombed, a lot like Venezuela did, for maybe a couple of months before the U.S. ever dedicates to actually striking them. So also, we do have some additional news out of Tehran. Can't leave y'all hanging here. There was a power outage that happened in several cities today. We don't really know how many there were and how large of a scale, but there were reports coming from the ground inside of Iran from a couple of cities that there were power outages within their area, which may be showing some form of a larger sabotage campaign that's still going on the ground. Then the Iranians came out and made this statement today. And I want to make sure to read y'all because there's no direct Farsi to English translation on this video, but it appears that the Iranian parliamentary deputy speaker stated, in about a month, we will recite the funeral prayer for the President of the United States, and their allies. And it was also made clear by an Iranian military official today that they were going to be seeking to harm any single American that they could get their hands on as well. So they made that pretty clear that they don't really like Americans. They don't like the American government. They don't like the U.S. president. They don't like anything. And so, you know, it's kind of shocking. It's kind of like we said on Sunday. I mean, that's exactly what they're about. So why in the world pretend like they're not about that? But if you want to see him actually say it, you can see it here on this video. There's a link to our map that we're using on air in the description below. You can go to this link in Tehran and listen to it for yourself because it's literally just a guy talking. And he sounds like this. I mean, with how that guy's sounding, they might be saying a death prayer for him. He sounds like death warmed over. So I think he's not doing too well. They ought to send him some flowers and a get well soon card. You know, maybe attached to a, you know, maybe something coming off of an F-15, but we'll see. Anyways, moving on from that and out of the Islamic Republic of Iran's capital, it also does appear that, at least according to some other information out of the United States of America, that there may be something more to this whole Iran deal. And I want to say that this is something a little bit interesting with this, something wildly interesting with this, as a matter of fact, because we were able to hear that while all of this is going on, the U.S. government is still saying that they are trying to line up talks with the Iranians to try and make some sort of a deal. I didn't include that on the map today. I thought I did, but according to the U.S. government, they're still shooting for Ankara on Friday, and they're going to try and get the Iranians back on board, because clearly we're trying to drag the people that we're about to attack and heavily outnumber and outarm into some form of peace talks. Although we stated that if they killed any protesters, we would bomb them, and apparently that's just completely gone to the wayside, and we've completely forgotten that we even said that. And Matthew, a lot of people are talking about the Iranian officials threatening to end these peace talks and just walk away. And what are a lot of people thinking that the U.S. is planning on doing, or Iran is planning on doing, and what are you thinking as well?
Okay, so now that we've heard the Iranian officials come out and make another mind-boggling statement that they want to end peace talks because they have so much leverage over the United States, why even bother talking peace? They don't even need to discuss peace. The Iranian countryside will simply defeat the United States. So what are they planning to do? 70% said Iran is simply trying to buy some more time by going through these shenanigans, while 21% said Iran is just playing hardball and they really actually want a deal and they're simply negotiating, while 3% said Iran didn't really say that. Oh, and they said that. They actually did say that. The crazy part is, though, if you don't have any leverage, like, for example, Iran has no leverage, there's literally an army knocking at their doorstep right now from the United States, then you can't try to act like you're going to call the shots because you can't. You don't have leverage. So Iran's not playing hardball. They're playing stupid is what they're doing. And I think they're trying to buy themselves some time. But the problem is, though, while they're trying to buy themselves some time, the U.S. is finalizing our attack preparations by bringing in air defense and all kinds of other offensive mechanisms into the region. We're also starting, most likely, a destabilization campaign inside of Iran. That's what you're seeing all these major explosions and fires breaking out all over the place, is most likely a foreign group causing that situation. So they're going to get destabilized while they're yapping and playing games. So I don't think it's going to pay off the way they think it's going to pay off. And I think ultimately Iran really won't have a choice in the matter. But Enforcer, what say you?
And also, really quickly, I do have to say something here. Apparently, we have the U.S. White House's spokesperson in the chat, because some people are saying that I'm a liar, and I'm not a liar. And some people are saying that the U.S. never insinuated or even threatened to bomb Iran or militarily act against them for threatening protesters. So I really want to quickly take a statement from the President of the United States and put it on air, because we always come with receipts here on this channel. We just don't say stuff to say it. We say it because we have proof. This is what the President of the United States of America said on the 2nd of January 2026, which is exactly 7 days, 1 week before the Iranians started to massacre protesters in the street. If Iran shoots and violently kills peaceful protesters, which is their custom, the United States of America will come to their rescue. We are locked and loaded and ready to go. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President of the United States. That sounds pretty clear to me that we were going to bomb the Iranians if they shot and killed anyone. So while some people might live in la la land where the president says whatever sounds the best no matter whether he said it or not, this statement here largely insinuates and clearly states that the U.S. was going to militarily intervene in Iran if anyone was shot and killed in the streets. You know, that's not my words, that's the president's words. So if you want to have a problem with that, you can take that up with him. We just work off of the facts here on the channel. So getting out of that, though, I would have to say that the Iranians might be trying to buy some time, generally with the negotiation attempts, because they never legitimately were going to negotiate about giving up enriched uranium, and they were never legitimately going to negotiate about stopping their funding to Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis. That would be absolutely ridiculous and absurd, because that is a huge point of their ideological path forward, is trying to destroy the West, particularly the United States and Israel. So with that in mind, they were never going to negotiate on that, and going through this whole rigmarole was generally to buy themselves some time. The honest truth is that this will not be the only time that they do that. They are going to do this again, and that is a 100% guarantee. They are probably going to do this towards the end of this week, or maybe even next week, depending on when they think that the U.S. might be getting close to striking them again. They'll probably start up the whole mill of let's talk and make deals, because we love making deals, don't we? We love talking about business deals, although this is foreign policy. It has nothing to do with business-related deals, and that will probably get the United States duped again into pretending like there actually will be talks when there will never be a talk, and the Iranians will back out of it again.
I'll be honest with you. While I do agree with the general idea that if you like dangle talks in front of the U.S. officials' faces, they'll simply buy it and go for it. I think in this case, I would actually disagree. There is an element of that to this, but I think the U.S. is trying to buy a little bit of time. I think they're also playing the same game that Iran's playing because we're still seeing a massive airlift take place right now. We're seeing C-5s, we're seeing all kinds of aircraft still flooding into the region, and they're coming from U.S. bases that happen to have Patriot batteries at them. So I think they're bringing in air defense, which suggests that we're not fully ready for the full extent of the retaliation from Iran, which might explain why we're trying to negotiate. Because if you recall, during the last time, right before we struck the nuclear facilities inside of Iran, the exact same thing took place. In fact, right before the strikes occurred, they said that we were going to try to negotiate with Iran to come to a deal, and then the negotiation was with the B-2 showing up and hitting all their nuclear sites. So I think we're trying to buy some time. I think that's what's happening this time around. But with Russia, though, I mean, they're still, and that whole situation is what it is. But in Iran, I think we're stalling.
I think we might be stalling, and I would say that that's probably pretty likely. But still, at the same time, though, this sort of a thing was seen very commonly with Venezuela. Even after the U.S. forces had been well built up in the area and had been given about a week to sit in place with no additional forces being added, waiting for strikes, the U.S. still stalled for about another 2 months after that because we kept on hearing rumors that the U.S. was talking to Maduro and trying to come up with some form of a deal because Maduro kept waving around the idea in the background, oh, we can make a deal, and then he kept on, like, hell, Maduro was even approaching the U.S. Remember those stories, Matthew, about giving certain things to the United States, like the oil and such, and trying to do such things so he could remain in power, and the U.S. kept going in a circular loop of talking to him, and then the talks would fail, and then they'd do it again, and they did that for 2 months before we actually went in there and grabbed him, and really the only reason we went in and grabbed the guy was because he was making fun of the president by dancing on stage and making jokes out of the threats that were being publicly made towards Venezuela.
Yeah, somewhat. I mean, you could make the argument that maybe in retrospect, looking back on the Venezuela situation, maybe the U.S. was stalling the entire time. It's hard to make sense of the madness because there is a lot of, I'm not saying this to be political, but there is a lot of illogic to the foreign policy planning by the United States. But it could have been maybe intentional chaos. So that way they bought time for the U.S. to prepare to actually go in and nab Maduro. So, I mean, I'm not totally convinced on that. I can see both arguments, but in Iran, though, I'm leaning toward the idea that we're actually stalling.
Yeah, we might be, and we do know that there are a large amount of airlifts still ongoing into the Middle East today, as we were able to see that there were a large number of C-17s, about 5 of them, that were tracked today flying into the Middle East, multiples of them, either to Al Udeid or into, I believe there is a Prince Saladin Air Base, or King Saladin Air Base in Saudi Arabia, the Muwafaq Air Base in Jordan, and a couple of others, from what we understand. There's even more flights being conducted from the United States right now, which we also were able to confirm as more air defenses appear to be being brought over by a wide variety of aircraft. As y'all can all see right here, this is a list of the C-17 flights that have been conducted over generally about the past week or so, roughly. And there has been several dozen C-17 and C-5 flights out of the United States of America, particularly from air bases that are very close to where U.S. Army air defenses are stationed at, that are flying into the Middle East on a near daily basis, which is showing us that they are moving air defense batteries into the areas. So it does seem as though we are still trying to possibly buy time ourselves to be able to get air defenses within the area that may be adequate enough. And there's also another foreign policy situation as to why we may be stalling on our end, which is that a lot of Middle Eastern countries right now really are not on board with trying to get an attack rolling against Iran. Even Saudi Arabia doesn't really seem to be that apt for it. And the reason why we believe that's the case is because they were scared of an Iranian counterattack, because with the air defenses present in the region amongst the entirety of the coalition and the United States, they still think that they might be overpowered by Iranian overwhelming first strikes. So the U.S. might also be trying to rush in a lot more air defense right now to try and appease the Saudis and a couple of other countries within the area, so that way they'll be happy enough with the defensive situation that they would then approve for the U.S. to use their air bases to strike Iran, which might also be highly likely. So I hope that does address that side of things the best we can, at least for now. And we also were able to hear a couple of more important things, at least about U.S. force dispositions at Muafak Air Base inside of Jordan. We were able to see that there were a decent amount of F-15Es and A-10 Thunderbolts, along with some more F-15Es seen right here on the satellite photography. So we can confirm that there was about 9 F-15E Strike Eagles and about 10 A-10 Thunderbolts currently at Muafak Air Base. The A-10s would not be used against Iran. Those are most likely for ISIS in Syria. But the F-15Es could be used against either ISIS in Syria or the Iranians in Iran, either way. We have also been able to confirm that there was a NOTAM issued over Cyprus today for some form of real-time tactical coordination. We believe that this may be some sort of an air activity being conducted by the United States, or it might be conducted by the Royal Air Force, considering that the Royal Air Force generally operates out of the Akatori Air Base inside of Cyprus. We're still trying to find out more information on that one right now, but it does seem that there is some sort of military corridor that's been created near to the area just west of Israel that might be used by the U.S. Air Forces or the Royal Air Force, depending on either one. The Iranians have also been trying to recruit Hezbollah to join their fight. We can see all these guys right here holding up their, what almost appears to be like 7-Up styled flags with the green and the yellow. I feel like these guys are about to try and sell me a soda. But they're actually going to be trying to join the fight, at least according to Israeli intelligence, in support of Iran if the United States conducts strikes on Iran. So Israel's already starting to ramp up the whole fear of, the guys with AKs and bottle rockets might try and shoot a couple into Israel, and that could be scary, so we'll have to level half of Lebanon again in response. We've also been able to hear that according to some news within Israel, it appears that Israel has requested operational freedom from the United States to conduct a unilateral military action against Iran, as the president is leaning towards diplomacy instead of strikes against the Islamic Republic, according to the Israeli Public Broadcasting Corporation. So it does seem as though the Israelis are actually, now after last week they said they were not militarily ready for the United States to hit the Iranians, now they're saying this week that they actually want to hit the Iranians on their own, and they're completely fine with taking all of the heat from the Iranians, even if the U.S. doesn't join them in that action at the moment. So the Israelis are generally running their normal interference as usual and creating a good bit of static about how well off our side is in the Middle East and how capable you might be even right now of conducting a strike on Iran. But a lot of people are also talking about a couple of other big things that happened specifically within Tehran today. First off, we have this little shocking clip right here. That's an Mi-28 Havoc.
Is that the ones that we saw in the hangar the other day?
It is.
Oh, so they did actually get some. So the Russians actually spared a few. It's a shame. They should enjoy these while they have them.
Man, they should, because they're going to get hit by a JDAM, and that's going to be it. They're not even going to take off. We also have been able to see some other interesting situations within Tehran, including this one. This was a major market. They call these in most parts of the Middle East, and especially within Iran, bazaars. And I'd have to say that it's quite bizarre that the bazaar burned down. And we also got a video of this as well, and it was a very large fire. We've seen stuff like this happen before, but usually during the lead up to the 12-Day War and during the 12-Day War.
Oh, it's hot in the streets of Tehran. I'll tell you what, the block is hot.
Man, I gotta say, something right there to see. Something to see, I'd have to say. And a lot of people are wondering, what's up with these fires? There's been a lot of fires and explosions and a whole bunch of mayhem and I guess you could say tomfoolery going on down there on the ground in Iran to such a degree that it's never really seen a parallel, at least up until recently, since the 12-Day War. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that? What are you thinking about that as well?
Okay, so you saw the major fire that we just watched in that video right there. That was a major shopping center inside the capital city of Tehran. And guess what? The Iranians claimed it was another gas explosion. No joke, I'm not making that up. They literally claimed it was a gas explosion. So we've been seeing a lot of gas explosions suddenly happening over the last week. And this is an unprecedented rate. They're having more gas explosions than Russia's having failures, which is incredible. So I would say, on the question of whether or not it's a foreign destabilization operation, the audience, about 50% of the audience said yes, it is a foreign operation, while 38% said it's probably just Iranian rebels causing fires, and 6% said no, it's likely just accidents. And at this point, there is very little chance, less than 1% at this point, that these are accidents or gas explosions for that matter. This is clearly intentional. This is some type of campaign, and it comes down to basically who you think is behind it. That's the real question. Some people, the 38%, believe it's Iranian rebels, and 50% believe it's a foreign intelligence group. And I would say that I personally think it's a foreign intelligence group. The explosions that we saw in Bandar Abbas and many other Iranian cities, that has the telltale sign of some type of foreign group operating within Iran's soil, conducting these attacks. And these are attacks, in my opinion. These are not mere accidents or some type of random fires. These are deliberate. So I would say it's foreign. It's likely a combination of Israeli. I would say certainly Israeli. Maybe possibly in conjunction with the U.S. People on the ground as well. But I would say it's got to be foreign. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd say that it's probably foreign, because we're seeing that these are happening at a very high rate right now in Iran, and it is highly unlikely that this is happening at a high rate when we haven't seen anything like this happening in Iran for a minute, out of complete coincidence. Wouldn't it be kind of weird, folks, that every single gas pipe in Iran is failing at the same time within the same week? In the whole country. I mean, that's a little bit odd. I mean, like that would be like saying if Flint, Michigan has lead in the water, then everyone in America is drinking lead water, and that's not true. I mean, in some places they might be drinking lead water, but that's not over the whole of the United States. I can tell you all that the water out here in Salt Lake City is clean and tasty, not Flint, Michigan water. So that would be kind of like making the same comparison within Iran, that every gas pipe is failing in different parts of the country at the same time. There's just no way that would be happening. So there's some form of external influence that is leading to these quote-unquote pipe failures, and that means that there's most likely some foreign involvement or human involvement in making this happen. So I would say that it's highly likely either the Mossad or it is the CIA. It's probably one or the other. But with that,
Also, by the way, I see people having a hard time coming to grips with something. They're saying, well, wait a minute, guys, those aren't military targets. I mean, technically, you're right. I mean, a shopping center would not typically be a military target, and neither would the apartments that have been exploding in these places like Bandar Abbas. So, I mean, it's not a military target, but at the same time, though, this is not an uncommon strategy in the modern day. We see Russia conduct it all the time. Hybrid warfare is constantly conducted on Europe 24/7. You'll see fires very similar to the fires you're seeing in the capital city of Tehran all the time across European cities. And you'll see all kinds of other stuff happening too, like explosions randomly, gas explosions also in Europe, same type of deal happening there. The point behind it is to destabilize the Iranian authorities and people to soften them up before an attack happens, a military attack on the country. That's the point behind it. And all the West has to say is just like Russia or anybody else says, is basically, oh, we suspected the IRGC was operating out of that facility, and therefore the strikes or whatever the covert operation we did is valid. That's all they're going to say if it ever comes to light. So I think it's just normal operations.
I would say so. Also, while the Iranians have bought themselves a little bit of time, they're getting in some little flights, special ones, to China with these 747s. These are freighter 747s. We don't know what they're picking up.
What are they picking up? Food?
Well, I'm sure it's humanitarian aid. Like, I'm sure it's humanitarian. Probably an MP5, maybe about a couple of million rounds of, yeah, hell, 545, maybe 762 by 39, maybe some air defense missiles, maybe air defense systems, probably something like that. The Chinese love to supply people who go up against the United States. And considering that they keep on flying to Urumqi, which is a major supply hub for the PLA SSF within the area of Western China, it is highly likely that they are not going on a snack and beer run to Western China. Highly unlikely. So they're going probably to go pick up some weapons. And this is why, folks, buying time is woefully important, hugely important to a country, especially when you're on the back foot. Because if you buy yourself some time, a lot of variables can happen. You don't really have a lot of chances for good things to happen if the U.S. bombs you quickly, because everyone's going to back off and stay away from you like you have cooties or something like that. When you buy yourself some time, the U.S. hasn't bombed you yet, meaning that countries can still kind of like push some support your way if they can. And that's what the Iranians are buying time for. They don't know. Maybe the Russians will give them a little bit of extra weaponry. Maybe the Chinese will give them something that will give them a little bit better of a cutting edge to buy themselves a little bit of extra time before the U.S. completely obliterates them. It's going to be something along those lines, and that's why the Iranians are buying time, is that way they can conduct some flights like these and maybe get some larger diplomatic support or diplomatic intervention by, say, the Chinese to try and lessen the tensions at the moment. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least at the moment, with what's going on with Iran and China and generally the rest of the Middle East. And also, one last thing before we move on from the Middle East, because we've been here for a minute. It's one last little bulletin on the map. The Iranians showed that they know how to work Google Earth. They have shown a picture of the Dhafra Air Base in the UAE.
Bollocks. How'd they get this? So did they get it from like China or something?
They got it from China.
They had to get it from somewhere. They don't even have the ability. They don't even have anything to take a photo like that. So they got a handout from somebody.
I'm trying to see if I can find that little Dhafra Air Base in here somewhere. Let's see. There's the Al Ain International Airport. Man, it's kind of crazy how most of here we are. Is this it? This is the Liwa Air Base. We're getting kind of close. Maybe it's further south in the middle of the desolate desert of nothingness. What is this? Oh, they got farms in the middle of the desert. Man, I bet you that's a huge drain on water. Let's see here. Dang, I cannot find this airbase. I mean, maybe they have some sort of a cutting edge here, folks. Maybe they know where it is, and I don't know where it is. Let's see. Maybe it's up here, near the northern part of the country. Yeah, maybe it's up here somewhere. I don't know. I didn't find this one before air. I really didn't care to because there's no U.S. forces here from what we know. So a little bit interesting they showed it, but there's nothing more than that. They probably got this picture from the Chinese. But anyways, moving on from that, it's now time for us to move on out of the middle of the East and on into the rest of the news that we have from around the world. But before we get on into all of that major news, particularly every single oblast bordering Ukraine losing power today, I do want to make sure that we get to a couple of questions because we've had about 100,000 people watch in the first hour and 10 minutes of the show, and we want to make sure to get to talk to a couple of y'all. So we're going to be taking 3 questions and then getting right into the major news of the Ukrainian drone attacks and missile attacks on the Russian Federation. So Matthew, what do we got?
And it really is insane. Like in the first hour of the stream, we have basically almost doubled, or actually not doubled, but matched our video viewership today, at least so far. So that's kind of crazy. The streams are doing wild these days. But anyways, jumping into our first super chat, this one goes to none other than Mark Ead, who puts in a $50 support. And thank you very much, Mark, for that generous support. And once again, helping to keep the channel running with that super chat support. He said, peel off one from the chat. And cheers, fellas. LSA, New Zealand from the South.
Hey, and a big shout out to Mark Ead and New Zealand in the south. The southern part of New Zealand is a great part of New Zealand, and I got to thank you incredibly for the support and helping this channel to keep running, because it is folks like you who help to make this channel possible, help us to keep the thing running, and help us to continue to cover this news every day. And we will make sure to peel one out of the live chat, or maybe peel out of the live chat. But beyond that, we will make sure to get one out of the live chat. And Matthew, what do we got in Mark Ead's honor?
Okay, so this one goes to Monochromatic, who said, do you think, or do we think that power outages in Iranian cities today could have actually been from discombobulator ramping up to big show?
And I would doubt it. The discombobulator generally fries mines, not electricity, from what we know at least. So I would doubt that it would have been used, and also they would have had to probably fly directly over those areas, so I would doubt that as well. But I do thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible, Mark Ead, and we wouldn't be able to sponsor live chats, and we wouldn't be able to keep this channel running. And it's thanks to the small amount of people out of the hundreds of thousands that watch this channel every day, that go over their way to support the channel through super chats like you do, Mark Ead, that we make this channel possible for every single person watching right now. So humongous thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Glock, who's there, also another longtime channel legend. And thank you very much, Mr. Glock, for that $20 support. We do appreciate that. He said, how can we get tomahawks? And they would change the Moscow citizens, Putin, by knocking out the power and heat.
That is a good question. The only way to get tomahawks is having that approved by the Congress, signed off by the president, and then having the president follow through with that. And the big problem right now is that the president is not going to do that, because the president has made it incredibly clear that he's not going to give any real meaningful support to Ukraine from this point onwards unless the Europeans buy it, and the Europeans can only buy from a pre-selected list of items, which does not include the Tomahawk. So generally, there is no way for Ukraine to get a Tomahawk at the moment because of the unmoving nature of the president and the fact that no matter what, and no matter how long the Russians refuse to end the war or actually willingly negotiate, we're basically just going to overlook that and allow the Russians to keep doing that and not really support Ukraine in any way. So I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. And a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we would not be able to make this channel possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep it running. And we always got to say that we're massively appreciative of folks like you helping this channel to keep on rolling. And so with that, we're going to be moving on into the last question of the segment, and then we're going to be moving on into the rest of the news at large.
All right, so this one goes to Ella MC Wheels NAFO, who puts in a $20 support, and thank you very much, Ella, for that 20, and we do appreciate that as well. And they said, Enforcers, greetings again from Wichita, and thanks again for y'all's explanation on your intro the other night, and have you seen the Russian high jump video out of Ukraine? And long live the LSA, and Slava Ukraine.
And thank you so much for the support, and Slava Ukraini, and long live the Lee Spring Army. And I don't think we've seen the high jump video, actually. Matthew, do you know what they're referencing?
I haven't seen that. I might have seen it. I might just not know what they're referencing.
Yeah, I don't think I might have seen it. I don't know what's being referenced specifically, though, but I don't really remember anything as the high jump video. But I do thank you massively for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep the thing running. But sadly, I don't really know what video that is. But I do thank you so much once again, and I hope that has addressed it the best we possibly can. And with that, folks, it is time for us to move on into the rest of the news for the night, which we do have a pretty significant amount of it, and a major piece of news that came out of Russia, or more so out of Russia and Ukraine. The Russian Federation, leading us into what the Ukrainians did to them today, the Russian Federation has conducted a major attack today on Ukraine's energy infrastructure and also the city of Kyiv. There has been a huge debate around this, and we're going to get a poll up on this right now to see what y'all are thinking, because it seems as though our followers on Twitter had a very unanimous opinion on this sort of an idea, but there has been a huge debate, and I'll lay this out before we even get into the news. On the 29th of January, the President of the United States stated that Putin had agreed, suggesting that he had agreed on the 29th of January, to a 7-day-long ceasefire, where he would not conduct attacks on the Ukrainian energy infrastructure, and he would not conduct attacks on the city of Kyiv, the capital of Ukraine, which had already been heavily hit by Russian attacks, knocking out most power and most civil utilities over the prior weeks. According to the President of the United States, Putin agreed to this and stated that he would not be conducting any attacks on Kyiv of any type for an entire week. And we've also heard that there would be no attacks on Ukrainian energy infrastructure at large for a week as well. The 29th of January was approximately 5 days ago, as of today, meaning that we would be 5 days, if we're assuming that the 29th of January is the beginning of that ceasefire period on Kyiv and energy infrastructure, we were 5 days into it as of today. We then saw that as of today, if we're taking that assumption properly, the Russian Federation had conducted attacks on the city of Kyiv and its energy infrastructure, which if we're taking the 29th of January once again as the start of the ceasefire, which was generally what appeared to have been stated by the President of the United States, this means that the Russian Federation has clearly violated the ceasefire. We also have...
Also, by the way, a quick correction here, because we got to be very careful with how we word things regarding the president, because you know how that whole situation is going. We believe it looked like on Twitter that a video was released on the 29th of January. It's not clear if the statement was actually made on the 29th of January, so that's up for debate. But generally speaking, there was a statement made that a ceasefire would last a week. We're really not told exactly how long a week was defined as either, so there's a lot of question marks about what the president really meant by his statement. Nobody's really for certain about it. It's kind of up for speculation.
Nevertheless, we have been able to hear that there has been a large amount of discussion today about this ceasefire, with Zelensky stating that the Russians had violated the ceasefire, the President of the United States stating that the Russians conducted the attack right after the ceasefire ended, and the Russian Federation stating a decent amount of different stuff in general, largely stating that they didn't, in pretty much every single iteration, that they didn't break the ceasefire, or that the ceasefire never even existed, which is what we've heard from some other sources. But we did get to confirm that there was direct attacks on Ukraine today, as we did see that a Zircon hypersonic missile, which is Russia's pride and joy of their hypersonic missile fleet, and is, quite by all definition, folks, this is a legitimate hypersonic. This is different than the Kinzhal, which is basically a modified Iskander-M, which is largely claimed to be a hypersonic missile, but it doesn't really meet the criteria exactly. The Zircon hypersonic missile is by all accounts a hypersonic missile in every degree. And the Ukrainians were able to intercept and shoot one down with a Zircon, well, with a M104 Patriot missile air defense system. The Patriot has been in service for quite a while. It's basically been in service since the Gulf War. And yet, a system that is 30 years old that the Russians claimed would never be able to shoot down a Zircon, shot one down. Here's the proof. There's the Zircon, and there's the Patriot, and there it goes. That Zircon is done.
That's a real patriot. That's patriotic. Look at that, how patriotic that is. That's something else. So much for hypersonic.
Man, I got to tell y'all something. These hypersonics just really aren't cracking up to what they're supposed to be. It's kind of like it's an overhyped weapons system, to be completely frank, that the U.S. doesn't really even have to invest in all too much, because the Zircon, quite literally, folks, is a literal hypersonic. I mean, it's not even like a Kinzhal where people argue that it is or it isn't. The Zircon literally is a hypersonic by stats alone. And let me go pull that up for y'all just to prove that, because this is something that I've got to say about Zircons and hypersonics in general. I feel like they're completely overhyped. It's a scramjet-powered, nuclear-capable hypersonic cruise missile produced by NPO Mashtrestroyshina for the Russian Navy. It utilizes a 3S-14 launch platform on frigates and submarines, and the missile has a reported top speed of Mach 9. So if we're taking that reported top speed at face value, this is a hypersonic full-on. So if it can be shot down by a Patriot, how much of a threat does any hypersonic pose? The THAAD is far more competent than a Patriot, and we're about to be replacing all of our Patriots with THAAD launchers. So, do hypersonics even really pose a threat? In my opinion is no. I don't really think they do. I think that hypersonics are really overhyped, because as long as a radar is able to pick up one of these things, which it appears that they clearly can, they can easily be intercepted. All you have to do is vector in the proper sort of a altitude and also distance away from the missile launcher to be able to hit it. And once a missile makes it into that area, an air defense missile that is, it is going to hit a hypersonic no matter how fast it's going or how slow it's going. So I generally think these things are nothing but a load of hype. And I've been saying that for years here on the channel. And some others believe different. Some people out there believe that hypersonics are clearly the weapon of the future. I think that's nothing more than hyped up bogus. Because the US already had this technology back in the 1950s, and we abandoned it completely because we said, here in America, this is completely stupid. An ICBM can do far better than this thing. A hypersonic would still take hours to reach Russia at the fastest speeds. An ICBM can hit Russia in 30 minutes. So what is the point of having one of these things when an ICBM can do its job far better? And that's why we completely abandoned the project. The Chinese brought this back 70 years later, just recently. Then the Russians hopped on top of the Chinese train of building these things. And now the US is acting like we have to have some of these things, although the technology is 70 years old and it was abandoned because it was basically redundant and pointless 70 years ago. So I don't even know why in the hell these things are considered a threat. Because if the Ukrainians are clearly proving you can shoot down any hypersonic with even a Patriot, these things are basically just any normal ballistic missile at this point. They're just a little bit faster, and that's all there is to it. So moving on out of that rabbit hole and rant about hypersonics, because I just think the whole thing's hype, we did get to see that the Ukrainians did conduct some interceptions near to the city of Kyiv today as well. And here's the clips. Oh, is that a Shahed? Well, I hope they can take it down since it passed the air defense.
Yes, yes!
Oh, yes. Oh, wow. Went down literally right there.
Man, like that was literally within view of the tree line. We also got another clip of them conducting another little discovery here. The Gebara drones, or the Gebara drones, which have been used by the Russian Federation as decoy Shaheds, and these are usually the ones that fly into other countries like Poland and such, actually has been converted into a drone carrier. This little cradle here apparently carries a smaller drone closer to the target, and once it's there, it's able to release the smaller drone to be able to go and attack a target. So not only is this thing serving as a decoy to soak up Ukrainian air defense fire, but now the Russians can try and possibly use it to launch off smaller drones to hit other targets inside of Ukraine. So it does appear That is a fairly interesting sort of an innovation by the Russians, and will be making the air defense situation a good bit more difficult if those decoys are able to make it in, and that also requires that the Ukrainians shoot down these drones, even if they're able to identify them as a Gerbera decoy. Outside of that, however, before we get on into what the Ukrainians have done to the Russians today in response to the Russians attacking Ukraine, I do want to make sure that we ask you all, what do y'all think about the discussions on the ceasefire being violated? And Matthew, what do people think about that, and what do you think about that as well?
Okay, so now that we've seen that Russia launched a major attack, and I mean a very large one, in fact, it could be one of the largest attacks of the year on Ukrainian energy infrastructure last night, seemingly violating the energy ceasefire that was supposed to be in effect. What are your thoughts? Was it actually in effect or was it not? Because at this point, there's so much confusion, nobody's really even sure if the ceasefire was even in effect. So 66% said Russia violated the ceasefire, while 19% said the ceasefire had already expired, and 8% said it's simply too confusing to know. So here is what we know generally. Zelensky and the Ukrainians are claiming the ceasefire was violated. So that's the Ukrainian position. The U.S. position is currently something to the effect of Putin honored his word, and technically the ceasefire ended on Sunday, which doesn't make much sense to me, but that's the U.S. position. And outside of that, I think there's also sort of the objective standard we have to kind of use here, because when there's two different opposing stories like that, you kind of got to line them up a bit. The Russians are also trying to say that they abided by the ceasefire and actually it ended on Monday or something. So there's a different version of the story no matter who you listen to. Generally speaking, based on what I heard, it sounded like the ceasefire was still in effect and it had not ended yet, because the words we had originally heard was it was going to be an entire week of the cessation of energy strikes on Russia and Ukraine. That was announced around the 29th, if I have that date correct. So it should have lasted longer than this. And we're seeing strikes last night that Russia conducted, massive strikes targeting the energy infrastructure. So I would say I'm with the 65%. Out of all the confusion, I do believe, in my personal opinion, that Russia violated the ceasefire based on what we know. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say, Matthew, really quickly, can we find the tweet or statement that the president made about the ceasefire really quickly? Because I don't think I have it on any of my war maps to be able to go and find and talk about.
Yep. I have a video which generally shows. I think we might be able to show the video actually. Let me see if it's something. We might be able to show it. It might be something that's open source here. So we can show the one that is talking. So the clarification that the president made, saying that it was Sunday to Sunday, we can show that one. That's put there in the likes tab. I'm trying to find the original one though, the original statement that he made. Let me scroll down and grab that real quick.
Yeah, because
it was down here.
I really want that one, because nowadays anyone says whatever they want in post after a statement's made. But what I'm really looking for is the original statement, because that's what we really need to judge the whole thing off of. Is that if, say, a tweet or something like that directly says it started today for a week, which a week is generally considered to be 7 days long, if we're talking about the generally assumed length of a week, and we're not talking about the Juche calendar or some other form of an obsolete calendar, we could generally discern how long the ceasefire was actually supposed to last, which is really what we're wanting to figure out here to talk about this with a good amount of certainty. Because, a lot of people say, like, for example, that the U.S. never said that we were going to militarily intervene in Iran because of the massacres. I just went and pulled it up a tweet where it said that directly. That's something that we kind of got to consider, is that a lot of people kind of just spin the truth literally while it's still hot and fresh, and I would like to make sure that we get as clear proof as possible as to when that statement was made, because we would generally assume, using common sense, that if a statement is made on that day saying that something is going to affect, it went into effect that day, not 2 days prior or anything else along those lines.
So here's what we have. You can generally show the tweet. You can't show the video of the original statement. We do have a video of it, but I can't tell if it's the non-copyrighted version that the White House puts out. So we can't show the video, the audio itself, but we can show the audio and video of the most recent clarification from the president about him claiming it was Sunday to Sunday. So we have both of those in the likes tab.
Okay, so do we have a date for the original statement? Because this was reposted on the 2nd of February, but I'm wanting to make sure that we have the original date somewhere out there attached to this.
So I've reposted so much stuff, it's hard to keep up with it here. I really can't find it on the spot. I tried to do a search for it a second ago. It's a little bit too on the spot to find it. But I recall seeing January 29th on one. I think it was from Anton Jeroshenko. Let me go see here. Give me just a second.
Got you. And we'll be giving Matthew just a second, folks, because we want to make sure that whenever we say stuff here on the channel, we generally have receipts to back it up, because we rarely ever say anything that's a definitive fact without some sort of a receipt in terms of video or picture evidence to be able to back up our claims or statements. We know that y'all count on us to be as reliable as possible, and that's why I want to make sure that we iron down that it was the 29th of January that prior statement was made that a ceasefire was going into effect, so we could then talk about it off of that topic. Because if we're making general assumptions that would be common sense deductions off of the idea that a ceasefire had to have been entered on the 29th of January, if that's when the statement was made, and then the Russians attack Kyiv today on the 3rd of February, which is 5 days after the 29th of January, if we were to deduce those two things together and we're able to confirm that that appears to be the case due to the statements of the President of the United States, then we would be able to deduce that if a week, a common calendar week, is 7 days long, and it was not clarified that it was a business week, which would be 5 days, then we could clearly deduce that that means that the attack actually did violate the ceasefire, if that is the case. But we want to make sure and double check that.
So I'm seeing here that Anton Jeroshenko posted this clip on the 29th of January, but what's unclear is whether or not that was the day the statement was actually made by the president. That part's a little bit unclear, but it would suggest that at least by January 29th, the statement had already been made by the president. That's what it suggests. So we can't pin down the exact date it was said. What you can do, though, if you want to let people hear the statement, you can play the audio, but just don't show the video, because I can't confirm this is the White House version of it. It appears it likely is, but I don't want to take the risk by showing the video itself.
Yeah, I would agree. Also, it does appear, let's see. So it looks like, let's see, I wish we could find some additional clips of this, because if all of the clips were posted on the 29th of January, we could easily assume that this was a statement made on the 29th of January. But I'm going to let y'all listen to the audio. Y'all won't be able to see the clip on air, but here's the audio to let y'all hear the direct words from the President of the United States, just that way we don't mess anything up and mince any words. So here you go.
And because of the cold, extreme cold, they have the same that we do. I personally asked President Putin not to fire on Kiev and the cities and towns for a week during this. It's extraordinary. It's not just like cold, it's extraordinary.
So he stated for exactly a week, and it was not clarified that that was a business week, which would be a 5-day week. So we would assume that, using the common definition of a week, that most reasonable people would assume that a week would last 7 calendar days from the day of the statement. Now, if that post is correct and that statement was made on the 29th of January, that means that we were in the 5th day of a 7-day ceasefire that started on the 29th of January, if our assumption is correct that that statement was made on the 29th of January, meaning that a full calendar week, which is 7 days, had not lapsed by the time the Russians had conducted a strike on Kyiv. So that would mean that, based off of that information, if our assumptions are correct, that would show that there was a clear violation of the ceasefire that happened today. Now, once again, that's based off of a good bit of assumptions, and we're going to be making sure to do additional research to make sure that we get that correct. But I would generally be with a 64%. It appears to me that, based off of our common deductions and assumptions that we can make on air right now, that, in my opinion, the Russians clearly did violate the ceasefire, as it appears to have only been 5 days into a 7-day ceasefire, meaning that the ceasefire had not ended yet, and for that reason, this would be a ceasefire violation.
And also putting that aside for a second, like let's put aside the ceasefire debate for a second, because there's still a lot of questions about when the statement was actually made, how long a week was. I think that ambiguity might have been on purpose, by the way, to be perfectly honest. I think that might have been intentional, but it's hard to tell. But the thing to me is this. Russia just launched a massive attack against civilian infrastructure. That's not debatable. We saw that on video. So who cares if there was a ceasefire or not? How come the U.S. officials are indifferent to Russia launching these massive attacks on Ukrainian infrastructure simply because it was outside of a ceasefire term? Then there's no outrage for it actually just happening. I mean, this is not good. They're literally attacking the civilian infrastructure in the coldest months of the year while people are freezing to death, and there's not much outrage about it. Like the main point is whether or not it happened during the ceasefire. That's what most people are getting caught up on. It's not the fact that Russia launched the strikes. It's merely the fact that it happened outside the ceasefire.
Yeah, that's something that's kind of a little interesting. I think a lot of people have just gotten familiar with the idea that the Russians slam Ukraine and cause terror and harm and death to civilians on a near daily basis, to the point that that's not even really the shocking part. But that ought to be the shocking part, because while the Russians were quote unquote adhering to the ceasefire, they just went on to attacking railroad carriages filled with people. Now, is that really better? No, that's worse, as a matter of fact, because then they're not indirectly killing people by freezing them to death. They're going out of their way to directly kill them because they can indirectly kill them by freezing them to death. So does that really seem like that's a good workaround? Not really. That's like saying, well, instead of say Germany in World War II, just starving out the Soviets, they round them up and shot them all instead, and that's clearly a little bit better. That would be about the same equivalent. And I don't really think if you put it that way, a lot of people would agree with you. A lot of people would be going, well, agreeing to not indirectly kill someone and then just going to directly killing them sounds like that's even worse at that point than what was happening before.
And also, it's like the praise was so out of place too. Like that you can show this statement, by the way, if you want to show this one right here for reference, so people know what I'm talking about. There was a video, the most recent one, where the president made a clarification about what he really meant Sunday to Sunday. You can show that one from Clash Report because that's the White House's stream. He's saying that Putin kept his word and will take anything. It's like, why are we giving credit to someone who took a pause from, killing civilians, which is Putin? He's the one doing these strikes on the Ukrainian energy infrastructure. How come we're giving him credit for pausing his strikes on civilians? It's like, that doesn't deserve credit. It's like, what are we going to give him credit because he took a pause from killing people? It's like, that's not cause for praise.
And also, I'll let you listen to the audio of this as well.
There's tremendous hatred between Zelensky and Putin. Tremendous hatred. I mean, it's a shame, but it's taken longer than we thought. I did call up President Putin, and he's agreed. He's put it out to. They have the same cold wave that we do. Maybe different because it's pretty far away, but it's the equivalent. And Ukraine's a very cold country. It's much colder than us. It's colder than, they say, on average, it's Canada or colder. And on top of that, they have a tremendous cold wave. And I asked him if he wouldn't shoot for a period of 1 week, no missiles going into Kiev or any other towns, and he's agreed to do it. So it's something.
So that was that statement.
Yeah, so I mean, it's just wild to me that you would expect, like, what I would like to hear from the U.S. officials is, we're glad that Putin allegedly abided by the ceasefire, but the fact that he's still attacking civilians is horrific, and Putin's going to have to pay a price for that. That's what we should be hearing from U.S. officials. Instead, it's general indifference after Putin started striking in some of the worst strikes of the year, strikes that are so bad that Poland had to dispatch their NATO aircraft to protect their borders. That's how large the strike was. And the U.S. is just indifferent. There's like, at least he gave us a week. I'm like, oh, is that the standard? Or he gave us a week of stopping killing people? It's like, that's not a good standard.
Let me ask this, because I see some people having a little bit of a problem with this. So y'all are saying that it would have been fine. Now here's what I'm saying. Let me make a comparison here. Any deaths of innocents, you can generally say, you can elevate that to the level of a genocide, right? So if we in World War II had asked the Germans to stop their genocide for a week, and they did, but as soon as that week was over, they started genociding more people per day on average than normal, that would be fine. Is that what people are trying to compare this to? Because I don't think that sounds like a good move. Like, if your main goal is trying to achieve a peace in the country, and you end up achieving a peace or a ceasefire, at least in a very limited circumstance, for 5 days, and then once that ceasefire ends, or a week for say, and once that ceasefire ends, the Russians then start attacking Ukraine to an even larger degree, how in the world does that really pan out to be in the best interest of peace in general? That would be a pretty rough one. I mean, that would be a pretty tough one to make for me. But anyways, we are going to be moving on from this because we do have a lot more news to cover. And we have been able to see that the Ukrainians did respond in their own way to the Russian attacks that have been conducted on Ukraine over the day. And the Ukrainians did slam Belgorod, Kursk, and Bryansk well enough that pretty much the electricity in all three of those oblasts have been completely knocked out. So moving us on into the area of Belgorod, we were able to see that there were some significant fuel shortages that had been caused due to the prior hits and attacks that had already been conducted.
Oh, wow, they're panicking. Look at that. They're wanting some fuel.
Man, they need some gas, or as they call it, essence.
I guess they're planning to fuel up their cars so that way if they don't have heating or electricity in their apartments, they can go sit in their car and warm up. I guess that's the logic behind it because, well, I mean, how does an electricity strike, cutting electricity to your apartment, cause you to run to the gas station? It's like your house doesn't run on gas.
Yeah, I would have to, I would have to say it doesn't really make a lot of sense, but I guess that's the only thing they could do in the meantime because this is what was happening in Belgorod overnight, folks.
Oh, there's the exact. Look at that. The power went off.
Ooh, and there was a second hit right here. Let's watch that again. You literally see the strike, and then just about a second later, the power goes out.
Yeah. Honestly, I hate to see that. Like, this is the same thing that's happening on the Ukrainian side. But the problem is, though, Ukraine is going to get hit by Russia anyway. So Ukraine's running the calculus through their head. They're like, well, if we don't retaliate, then Russia's going to pay no price at all for striking our civilians. So we got to do the same thing in return to try to make the calculus more on a level playing field. But I hate to see this still happening, though, because these are still civilians that are getting affected by this inside of Russia. And the unfortunate part is Vladimir Putin's not going to care about the civilians. So largely speaking, he's going to let these people freeze to death, and he won't do anything about it.
Man, I gotta say, it is something else. And I also gotta say that I generally don't feel too much of a sympathy for the Russians because the Russians generally have brought this on themselves. The Ukrainians held off from attacking energy infrastructure in Russia for a solid 3 years during the war and have only recently started to do that because the Russians have been slamming Ukrainian energy infrastructure every single winter since 2022. So while some people would say that's unfortunate, one thing I'd have to say is that it's unfortunate the Russians have done nothing in Russia to any degree, to any extent, to try and stop the Russian Federation from continuing attacks on Ukraine that would see Ukraine conduct those attacks in turn on Russia. That's generally how I look at it, because it's one thing if the Ukrainians were going out of their way to do this and the Russians weren't doing it to them, that would be quite sympathetic. But the problem is that the Russians have done this to Ukraine for 4 straight winters. And so for that reason, it's not really that sad to see it happening to the Russians because the Russians have violated the Geneva Convention in that regard so many times that the Ukrainians are basically doing what they could have done back in the beginning of the war in 2022 in the first winter that was had, where the Russians conducted these sorts of attacks. We also saw further videos coming out of Belgorod where we were able to see more blackouts occurring within the area, also in this clip.
Как будто постойте здесь, там много летит.
Damn.
Oh!
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 Why the hell did the car alarm go off?
Да постойте вы,
scared.
пожалуйста.
The power's off. Very shrill, very shrill.
A very, very loud, could work as an air raid siren. But anyways, here's the name. Oh, here's this clip also showing the blackout in Belgorod.
Oh,
Oh,
jeez.
Bro, all the lights tried to turn on backup power right there at the end. It's like, oh, it's nighttime, bleh. And then turn back on, and then the power went completely off. Oh, there went an air defense missile, actually.
It's chaos.
Все, пиздец, мы без света. Ожидаемо.
Well,
As you can see here, Bliat, we're getting slammed.
he said, effing idiots. Like, man, it's like, man, I don't know. I mean, it's like, maybe the Russians kind of brought that on y'all. But we also were able to see outside of Belgorod that this didn't just happen in Belgorod. This happened in Kursk and Bryansk as well. This is generally a compiled bit of clips from Kursk and Bryansk showing the major citywide blackouts that have also occurred here and are also believed to be oblast-wide as well.
It was a cold night that night in Belgorod.
Man,
Rats were stirring.
Man, it was that kind of night that makes you go, no, no, это грулишь, Man, like, oh, look, the big Z is illuminated, though. It's Перо, the victory, победа, блин.
That was so stupid to use a letter Z for their symbol. That is like, I know it's been that way for a long time, but it still just hurts my brain.
Man, you know the Russian soldiers in life and death. I guess you could say they got Z's over them, either by for Berod's Popieta, or as they go to sleep for good. I guess it kind of worked out for them in the long run symbolically. But yeah, Kursk and Bryansk and Belgorod appear to be completely without power right now. Over 1 million people in all three oblasts are without power. This means that this is the singular largest energy grid attack that has been seen in the entirety of the war in Ukraine that the Ukrainians have conducted on the Russians in an attack. The largest power outage that we had seen in a singular attack was the last attack that was conducted in the Lyubertsy area of the city of Moscow. Around that area, around 600,000 people were left without power. So this one is now upped that power outage by about several hundred thousand people within the three oblasts combined. So a pretty significant hit, and also major damage to the Russian strategic infrastructure near to the border areas, as electricity is also vital to Russian governmental and military operations within these areas. Before we get on into the rest of our news, at least inside of Ukraine, I do have to bring y'all to a couple of bits of international news that we've gotten over the day. And we're kind of going to be going over these kind of quickly, but before we get to them, though, I do want to make sure to address this one poll that we have, because panic has begun in Russia's border regions over these attacks. So, Matthew, what are people thinking about these attacks, and what are you thinking about them as well?
Okay, so Russia launched some of their largest energy attacks on Ukraine just last night, and then Ukraine said, "We will up you one, good sir, and raise you with your power outages." So that's exactly what they did. The entire Russian border regions, several of them actually on the Ukrainian border, are completely out of power, and they're in major blackouts after Ukrainian missiles, as we saw in the videos, absolutely ravaged the place. So 49% said Putin will escalate to stop Ukraine. It's how Putin will respond to this, while 41% said nothing will change at all, and 6% said Putin will back off to save Russia. And why will Putin change? He has no reason to change. He doesn't give a damn about the people in the border regions, and also he's going to keep striking Ukraine. Nothing's changed for Vladimir Putin's calculus, so I'm with the 41%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that I'm with the 41%. Nothing's really going to change at all, because the Russians are at their absolute limit for strike capabilities at the moment, and they always talk about how they're going to do something, but the reality is that they really can't. They have a very limited number of Oreshniks, and that hasn't really seemed to dampen Ukrainian resolve at all. As a matter of fact, it even emboldens them farther. And on top of that, the Russian conventional attacks with drones and missiles are pretty much at the highest volume that they can sustain. If they did any more than that, we would probably see that their attacks would become smaller in the following weeks, because they would be running out of vital munitions and supplies that they would be using in those future attacks. So while the Russians would want to escalate, there's probably not much of a chance they really even can, just due to a lack of material ability to do so. So I would have to be with a 41%. But moving on from that, though, and on into China, we have been able to hear a little interesting development in China, a very small one, but the KMT, also called the Kuomintang, has had a little conference with the Chinese Communist Party. They held this one in Beijing, and the KMT deputy chairman, Cao Su-sen, said that both sides of the Taiwan Strait should uphold the 1992 consensus and oppose Taiwan independence. Participants also proposed expanding cooperation in normalizing cross-strait exchanges, including passenger travel and tourism, emerging industries and related research and investment, healthcare and wellness, environmental protection, and disaster mitigation and relief. I gotta say, the Communist Chinese really have a big friend in the nationalist KMT party. Sounds as though nationalism isn't really what the KMT is for these days, because the KMT was the ruling party of Taiwan up until the 1980s, because of the fact that Taiwan was a military dictatorship and was staunchly nationalist and opposed to the Communist Chinese. Now the modern KMT is basically a Communist Chinese shell, which is a little bit interesting. But anyways, moving on from that, Taiwanese politics is actually a little bit complicated, but I can also tell y'all, the KMT basically has no representation in the government. Out of all the parliamentary seats, they hold less than 10%. They're one of the smallest parties in the Taiwanese parliament, so basically they're non-existent. But moving on out of that, it is time for us to get to America, because we have news coming out of America, and it's very interesting, actually. There was a nuclear sniffer over San Francisco today, sniffing around. Did you see this, Matthew?
Yeah, I saw this thing, man. I saw this thing flying around. You know, people didn't even know we had like nuclear sniffer helicopters until a short while ago. Like, people just realized this is a thing.
Yeah, so the National Nuclear Security Administration, the NNSA, which is a very small and kind of an obscure sort of federal agency, like a lot of people don't even really know about it, to be entirely honest with y'all. I didn't even know that we had that today either. I thought this kind of stuff would fall under the Department of Energy, just to be completely honest. But they actually used their Leonardo AW-139 to sniff around for nuclear materials over San Francisco, and they did like a dozen orbits over the northern area of San Francisco. We believe that this is related to the upcoming Super Bowl in the area, and that's why they're doing it, to make sure there's not going to be any sort of a dirty bomb that's been preset in the area for the Super Bowl. But it is pretty wild. I mean, I've never really heard of a nuclear sniffer, especially a helicopter-based nuclear sniffer in the United States, and also it was flying purely over this northern area of San Francisco, around this area of the parks that exist near to the area of the Golden Gate Bridge, which is right here, and also the areas of North Beach, Telegraph Hill, the Pacific Heights, and the Marina District, which, to be entirely honest with you, I don't really see a Super Bowl stadium in this area, so I don't really know why in the world this would be related to the Super Bowl, but I'll take it at face value. Huh?
Where is the Super Bowl being held? I don't follow football, so I don't really know.
Yeah, me either.
It's going to be held in the San Francisco Bay Area, and it's going to be held at what stadium, though? Like, how come they're? Is it Levi? Is it Levi? No, no, that's not it. Hold on a minute. Let's see here. Does anybody know what stadium that's being held at? Because I'm not a football person. I'm trying to like do quick research. What the hell? Like, I just want the stadium name. Like, why is it so hard to find that? So it's going to be at the
Chase Center?
Levi Stadium, Santa Clara. So it is the Levi Stadium. Where is that at?
Santa Clara. Where in the hell is Santa Clara? That's well, it's in the Bay Area. We know that at a minimum, so we got a bit of a start. Well, hell, where in the world is Santa Clara? I say.
Type it in, Levi Stadium.
Santa Clara. I don't want to do that. That feels like cheating. Like I kind of
down here.
It's down here. So they were nuclear sniffing up here for a Super
that's
Bowl
not the
down
same
here.
area. Yeah, that's so. I mean, how did we come to the assumption that it was that was for the Super Bowl?
Because the original poster stated that this is highly, let's see, all sites expected to be highly trafficked ahead of this weekend's Super Bowl. What is that, 60? I believe, in Roman numerals. So, so it looks.
I don't agree with that. It's like, how are we coming to the conclusion this is about the Super Bowl? This isn't anywhere near the stadium. I mean, technically speaking, if they're going to try to like sniff all the roadways leading to the stadium, then how come they only sniff that one roadway?
Yeah, I don't know. Let's see, what else do they say? So I don't know. Like, I feel like this might be related to something else. It might have been a tip that there was some sort of nuclear material in San Francisco somewhere, and that's what got them snooping around. But the Levi Stadium is all the way down here. It actually looks like a pretty nice stadium, all things considered. I mean, yeah, that's a pretty nice one right there. I don't really go to football games. I've never been to one, actually, folks, so I've never really looked at the football stadium all too much. But it's all the way down here. So I think that it might have had something else to do, because I don't know why a lot of people who would be going to the Super Bowl would be in northern San Francisco, which, as far as logistics are concerned, I think that's pretty far away from both international airports. And most people who would be arriving for the Super Bowl would go straight south right after they got out of the airport.
So what's in that area up there? Is that the port area or something? Like what's around this spot? Rather than the bridge, obviously.
There isn't really a port up here. I mean, like, the port is practically, like, this used to be the port, but the real port of San Francisco is down here. Let me see. Where the hell is it? It's over here in Oakland. Let me see if I can find the container port. I'm trying to think of all this because I read a book on this, folks. And this is where the container port. Here we are, right here. So this is really the port of San Francisco now, which is technically the port of Oakland. San Francisco is really more of like a tourist sort of a city, basically like a post-industrial city. So there isn't even anything really important up here, rather than like tourist areas, some residential, and this park, which was where this thing was flying over.
You don't think they have like, where's the Tenderloin? That's nowhere near here, is it?
Oh, no, I actually think let's see, the Tenderloin is somewhere in here. I think it's like in here somewhere, actually, as a matter of fact. Let me type that in.
I don't know why they had this nuclear sniffer over the Tenderloin, but you never know.
Here's the Tenderloin, right here.
Oh, it's right there. Oh, geez, that's right in the middle of everything. That's really right there. I didn't know where that geographically was before now, but they seemed, I guess they were honing in on that park over there, I guess.
Yeah, I wonder why. Like, that's interesting. Honestly, dude, the Tenderloin doesn't look that bad. I mean, Like,
Well, there's a bad section of the Tenderloin. Talking about Skid Row.
well, no,
Hey,
Skid
wait a minute,
Row's
Skid Row
LA.
the same thing? Yeah. My bad. I got mixed up there for a second.
Where in the world is the bad part of like the Tenderloin though? I mean, this was maybe 2 dozen square like blocks. Like, where in the world would that be? Someone tell us in the chat. Y'all gotta know. Someone's gotta know something about that because I'm interested now. Like, I just dropped down. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, here we are. So we got one guy down there. He's doing the fent walk. And I mean, honestly though, I'm not gonna lie. What people call bad man is not like Birmingham bad. I mean, this is still like 2 steps above Birmingham, Alabama, or Montgomery. Like, it isn't that bad.
I've seen the bad part of the Tenderloin, and the bad part of the Tenderloin is worse than anything we're familiar with. Like, it's actually really, really bad. So I don't know. Like, to me, every city's got a bad side. I think that's the part that most people don't understand. Like, when people say, "Oh, this city's bad because of its politics," "This city's bad because of its politics," it's like every city's got a bad side. I will say though, there are some cities that are genuinely worse than others, but it's a small handful of cities that are actually really that horrific.
Honestly, it's a lot of propagandists that just try and tear down America's image because I mean, this doesn't look bad at all. It's not the greatest city I've seen, but it's also not horrendous either. This looks pretty decent. So, I don't know. Like, a lot of people say stuff's bad, but if you stay outside it, like I've learned, folks, that like the bad part of a city is usually only a couple of blocks. And usually it's in very localized areas. Very few of them are completely run down and destroyed. And usually it's a lot of hype talk that gets people thinking that a place is an absolute hell. Because the truth is that a lot of people say that West Virginia is an absolute hell, and also the areas bordering West Virginia in Virginia are an absolute hell. But if you ever go and look at Street View in any of those places, it's not that bad. Like, it's pretty decent looking, and it's just a reputation that it gets, because every single group has got to have another group, so if you're leaning to the left or right, you always got to have a place where the right people live or the left people live, and it's got to be a hellhole. So, I don't know. Like, there's rough places, but China has rough places. I mean, we just saw that on our last stream on Sunday, so, I feel like it's a bit of an unfair critique to make it sound like America's the only place that has a flaw when every country has that problem. But anyways, moving on from that news in San Fran, we are going to be moving on out of California and on over and into the East Coast, where all the business goes down. And we were able to see that the George H.W. Bush is now outbound. It's heading somewhere. We don't know where. We know it's going to the Eastern Mediterranean, but we don't know where. It could be going anywhere. Who's to say? We don't know. But anyways, we also were able to hear another statement out of the Washington, D.C. area today, where the president stated, according to a reporter, the reporter asked, "Yesterday you said Putin agreed to pause during the cold weather overnight. Those attacks started up again." The president said, "It was Sunday to Sunday. He hit him hard last night. He kept his word on that." So now the president's saying it was a Sunday to Sunday agreement. Which I don't know, folks, because, once again, the first word we had ever heard about this thing was on the 29th of January, which is well after the Sunday that was agreed on, and I feel like this would have been a big enough thing that probably would have been mentioned whenever it was agreed upon. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean, Matthew? Like, I feel like that would have been an official statement from the office of the president whenever it was officially agreed upon, because that would be a pretty big thing to get the Russians to agree to.
Yeah, I mean, unless we just happened to miss it or something, which I'm not sure how we would have missed it, because we followed this stuff like a hawk. And also, considering how the president loves to brag, it seems like he would have been the first one to be screeching about it. So there's a lot of like confusion. Usually, like in my personal experience, when there's this much confusion about something, someone might be telling a story. Usually when there's this much confusion, it's hard to tell exactly who is telling the story, but you can come to your own conclusions about who's fibbing here.
Yeah, I would say so. And now, folks, it's time for us to finally move on. And let me make sure that, okay, we did cover the Chinese news. It's now time for us to move on into Europe. And it's time for us to start getting back towards the Ukraine war, because we have been running news for nearly 2 hours, folks, and we're finally getting on into Europe. You can kind of tell from that how big of a news night it was. But moving us on into Germany and Poland, we were able to hear that a German corvette had been sabotaged. This is actually the specific corvette right here. And I have to say, folks, the Germans have something with these corvettes. I really like their design. They're incredibly small, but they look good. They look really good. But according to the information that we've been able to get, German authorities are investigating a serious sabotage attempt involving Germany's new corvette, the Emden, which is the one seen here. Uncovered earlier this year, In Hamburg. And I'll show y'all where Hamburg is. Hamburg is the city right here. And some of y'all may also know this. Fun fact. The hamburger is named after a city in Germany. Now, can y'all guess which one it is? That's right. It's Dresden.
Munich.
Man, we both were going in for that one. It's named after Hamburg. That's where the name comes from. But anyways, Hamburg is a very large port city for the Germans. Y'all can actually see the endless port facility that is Hamburg. It's basically more than half of the city in reality. It's actually an unbelievably massive port. I mean, look at this. You have some of the largest ships in the world, and they are able to actually moor at Hamburg and load up with cargo. It's actually a pretty crazy port facility, and one that it just blows my mind with the logistical complexities of how much land area this covers, how much it's trafficked, and how much cargo they're able to move in and out of this port every day. But outside of that, this is also where the naval yards for the Germans are, and this is also where they get their brand new corvettes like the Emden. The incident was discovered in the very early part of this year during a routine pre-delivery inspection at the Blumenvoss shipyard, part of the NVL group. Inspectors found dozens of kilograms of metal shavings that had been deliberately poured into the ship's propulsion and gearbox systems, including diesel engine components. Now, a lot of people... Now, actually, Matthew, you're a bit of a car guy. What would metal shavings poured into a transmission, gearbox, and engine system do to an engine once it's turned on and running?
Well, I'm not quite that good of a mechanic, but common sense would tell me if you drop shavings into like a transmission housing or something like that, you'd probably slowly wear the teeth down the transmission to the point where the transmission wouldn't be grabbing the gears, or it'd either be slipping or something like that. So it probably grinds it down over time, the metal.
Now, the truth is that Matthew got that right. But what he got wrong was that this would happen very quickly, because metal shavings in that amount can actually destroy an engine pretty quickly, especially an engine of this size that we would assume is inside of the Emden. Investigators say the abrasive metal would have caused catastrophic engine failure if the vessel had gone to sea, possibly disabling the corvette, delaying commissioning for months or years, and costing millions of euros in repairs. The sabotage was caught just days before planned sea trials and the maiden voyage. The damage would have been so bad that the engines would have actually been destroyed in sea trial, which would have been before it was even commissioned and accepted by the German Navy into actual service. So this was a pretty severe sabotage attempt. Luckily, they inspected the engines and the systems properly and found this attempted sabotage before any real damage could be caused. But an absolutely crazy sort of an incident right there, and one that is showing us that Russian sabotage, which is what's generally believed at the moment, truly really knows no bounds. We also were able to see that in Poland a drone fell onto a base. Apparently the gendarmerie of the Polish army stated that it was a small toy-like drone of unknown origin that fell on a military base in Przyszyce, Poland, I believe is how that's pronounced, with the drone seen flying over the base before crashing, after which it was secured and handed over to military police. Security officials say the drone was an unsophisticated device that was possibly controlled using a mobile phone, while containing no recording devices such as a memory card or SIM card that could transmit data. So someone was goofing around, basically. This one actually has nothing to do with the Russians, but someone was kidding around a military base.
Also, by the way, since you're some of a military historian enforcer, what is a gendarmerie?
Gendarmerie is military police.
Generally, yeah. It's a military force with law enforcement duties in the civilian populations. They're not really in charge of necessarily policing the military. It's more about policing the civilians from like a military perspective.
Yes. The Germans used those heavily in the Second World War, and also there was a lot of other countries that had their own version of gendarmerie. But most of them, actually, funnily enough, folks, this was a concept that was heavily seen in France, really up until about the First World War and the Second World War. But this was heavily seen and highly common in most countries that were either Central European or Eastern European throughout most of, say, the line battle era, the pike and shot, well, kind of the pike and shot era, really more of the line battle era, and then also the Napoleonic Wars and later on towards World War I. These were really common to see, but the Germans used these a whole lot. Generally, the gendarmerie in World War II by the Germans were used primarily for anti-saboteur and anti-partisan activities, so basically behind-the-line policing, which nowadays the Chinese have something very similar, but they call it the People's Armed Police, and that's what their job would be in the midst of wartime in occupied territories. But anyways, moving on out of that, and on into Warsaw, we also were able to see that the Polish have arrested a Possible spy. Police detained a longtime Defense Ministry employee on suspicion of spying for Russian intelligence. The suspect, working in the Defense Strategy and Planning Department, was arrested at work after a months-long counterintelligence investigation. I would say that they probably wouldn't conduct arrest unless they had some sort of a reasonable articulate suspicion. So we'll have to follow this little story whenever we get further updates, but that's a fairly interesting one, possibly showing that the Russians had a mole inside of the Polish Ministry of Defense, or maybe several that have not been found yet. Also, during last night's attack on Ukraine, the Polish Air Force was scrambled in response and did conduct combat air patrols within southeastern Poland near Derezhau and Lublin, waiting for any Russian drones to cross, and none did, luckily. Moving on out of all of our Polish news, we also have one last bit of news in the Baltics. The US WC-135R that had been seen in the United Kingdom just a few days ago actually didn't go to Iran. It conducted some form of a patrol through the international waters of the Baltic Sea. According to what we know, this aircraft does conduct nuclear detection samples and reads the atmosphere to detect radioactive particles from nuclear tests or nuclear incidents. We don't know why it conducted a flight up here. I'll be entirely honest with you, we actually have no leads or any information to lead us to even assume why it was flying around conducting a patrol in this area, but it is quite interesting to note that it was conducting something in the Baltics. Moving on from that, it's now time for us to move on into Ukraine, because we have war news to cover out of Ukraine. First off, we were able to see, moving us on out of Kyiv, because we already covered all the air defense news, that up in the Sumy direction, the Russians were getting a little hit. They were getting hit a little bit by the 30th Separate Motor Rifle Battalion. And really quickly, let me make sure. Oh, this is actually a Russian fiber optic drone. We don't show that footage here. I did not catch that until now because I saw all the Russian unit emblems, and I was like, wait a minute, that's not Ukrainian. But moving on from that,
Sue me.
uh-oh. Sue me, baby!
The Sumy region, you gotta love that region. They said, sue me, sir, Sumy region, you gotta love it.
I don't like this guy making these jokes. I'm going to obliterate him in a lawsuit hellfire. But anyways, moving on from that, we are going to be moving on into our location unknowns. Because we did get from Miss DC, Keeper of the Records, the casualty report, and there was one Bobcat. Holy moly! And according to Miss DC, Keeper of the Records, the Russian loss report for day 1,441. And we are greatly appreciative of that. And Miss DC says that it's day 1,441 today. I thought it was day 1,442 because on Sunday we had day 1,440. So that would make today 1,442 by that count, unless that count was wrong. So we're still, we've actually been trying to figure that one out the whole stream off air. And I'm not really sure. Miss Disa might actually be right, though. It might actually be 1441. But we're still looking into that and trying to figure out where the counting error was had. But beyond that, though.
Trust in Miss Disa. I'm telling you what, I had 1441 on my sheet before we went live, and I was told it was 1442. And I was like, how can this be? Because Sunday was 39. So how we jump forward like that? And I'm like, I don't think it's like this.
Man, I don't think it was like this. But here's my thing. here's my thing though. Like if I show y'all, this is why I have 1442. If I show y'all Sunday here on the map, it said 1440.
Whoa. Man, be careful showing this, man. We're going to get copyright.
Oh God, like copyrighted by ourselves, man.
Yeah.
Really?
I'm going to sue ourselves.
It's time to wrap up the lawsuit. The enforcer is suing the enforcers. But this is why I'm saying it was 1442, because Sunday was 1440, and I think the day before that was 1439. So I'm going to have to go back, and I'm going to have to go through all of the streams and figure out where the counting error was had, because if today is 1441, apparently I miscounted the days somewhere down the line a while ago, and I'm not really sure when. But moving on from that, though, we are still trying to figure that out. But for record-keeping purposes, today is day 1,441. And according to Miss DC, Keeper of the Records, 1,171 drones is the new highest daily loss. Yesterday's 1,083 was the previous high loss, and among recent averages in tanks, artillery, and vehicles, and in other special equipment after the 2 from yesterday, which is always wonderful to see. Now, over the past 24 hours, 760 Russian soldiers have been wounded and killed, along with 6 main battle tanks, 4 APCs, 53 supply trucks, 1 air defense system, 171 drones, 153 supply trucks and fuel trucks, and 1 Bobcat skid steer. All in all, a pretty good day. And always great to see. And a huge thanks once again for Miss DC, Keeper of the Records, for providing that information to us. Miss Disa is our keeper of the lost records, and most likely the day number as well, because I'm very certain at this point I probably did get that incorrect, but I still got to figure out when I got that incorrect, which I'm going to have to do off air after the show. But moving on from that, and on out of the casualty report, we are going to be moving on into the front lines, into the Luhansk area, where we were able to see an S-400 cooked to a sear. More so cooked well done. Or maybe even to congratulations, which is a step above well done. And the Russians, they lamented the loss of this beast.
Wait a minute. Am I correct in saying that an S-400 system cost about $500 million?
Duh.
Oh, man. That's a lot of money.
But they didn't lose all of it, Matthew. They only lost 90% of it. So, I mean, you know...
Oh, so they only
discount.
lost like $450 million. That's all.
Yeah, something around there. You know, you can't exaggerate these numbers. The people, they count on us. I'm just kidding, by the way. They pretty much lost the whole
Watch
damn
your
thing.
mouth.
Watch your mouth, young man.
Are you regulated?
Also, by the way, Matthew, you want to try and read these Russian words? This says, this is NATO's vehicle, is it not? That's actually what it says. Это натовская техника или нет? That's what that means.
Oh, damn.
And then they say...
That's pretty good.
And then they say nasha, which means ours. It's ours. That's basically what that means. Matthew, you have to brush up on the Duolingo. Like, man, like...
Блядь, сука, блядь!
Пиздец, иди нахуй, блядь! Шойгу! Это надо пропасно, блядь! Like, man.
Да. Полная грила. I'm going off, man.
Well, honestly, man, Ukrainian is actually pretty different. I've been doing Ukrainian on Duolingo and Italian, and Ukrainian is actually a good bit different than Russian. Because I thought after I'd known Russian a good bit, Ukrainian would be kind of easy, but it's different enough. Oh, you see them saying this is ours in the Donetsk People's Republic. This was done by the Ukrainians on our position. It's ours, blah, blah, blah. Let's see. Popotani, Razvedka и Opoldi. So I don't know what that means, unfortunately.
Yo, when does dude swim down from the Arctic Circle? That's walrus.
Bro, this is Mr. Walrus from Alice in Wonderland, bro. He probably eating clams on the beach.
He's probably twirling that stash.
Oh man, I can't believe they cooked an entire S-400 battery in one building.
Whose pay is getting docked over this?
I wonder, Bliet. Who in the world is going to be put into the meat grinder units over this one?
What is this hunk?
What in the hell? Bro, that's the hatch that you crawl into like a clown in a cannon. Like, bro, and you get launched out the front.
That's the one you see all those safety videos about. They're like, don't crawl in there with the gases filling the chamber.
Oh, man, they painted a big Z on the side of it. Oh, bro, it was cooked. Bro, the main vehicle was cooked to a nice crisp, a delicious crisp.
Oh, the leaf springs are still intact. Perfectly intact.
Man, that's because the Lee Spring Army will stand up bold. Man, I tell you.
We do not endorse the Russians in any capacity whatsoever.
That engine block did apparently stand up pretty well to the burning. It is cast
Man, that is
iron.
a huge engine. What is that? That's more than 16 cylinders, isn't it? Is that? Wait a minute. That might be actually. That is a 16 cylinder.
I think it might be a 12.
Are you sure? I'm seeing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Yeah, you think you might be
7.
right. Yeah, I think you might be right. It might be 14. I mean, that's a pretty big engine, though.
Huh? Maybe.
What? Maybe.
Possibly. Possibly. Maybe. I'm trying to do another count. That one. Hold on. Wait a minute. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's only 7. I've never heard of a 14 cylinder. That's kind of interesting.
Boy, yeah, we make a 14-cylinder automobile.
Hey, everybody's saying 12. Everybody's saying 12. So maybe I'm miscounting or something. So, yeah, I think it's 12. My bad.
Boy, man, I took a rough guess at that. I was like, I don't think it's 16 because I think 16 cylinders are what they put in the T-72s and the T-80s, and that's why I was like, I don't think it's 16 because that feels like it would be a lot of power for this thing. I was thinking it might be a 12, and it looks like a lot of people are saying it's probably a 12. Someone said it's a 6-cylinder. Get the hell out of here! Like, get the hell out of here! This is not a 6-cylinder. No way in hell. A 6-cylinder is a lot smaller than that. But moving on from that clip and on towards Konstantinivka, we also get to see the 157th Mechanized Brigade hitting some Russians. Oh man. Oh man, they're getting right under this crappy little vehicle. Oh, hit it, Vadim. Oh, bing. Oh, they were under there.
Oh my God. They were hiding in the oil bay.
Bro, that was not what I was expecting. I thought they were going to hit the undercarriage of the vehicle. They went straight down into the bay. I didn't even know, like, that's nuts. But anyways, moving on from Konstantinivka and down past Pokrovsk, we didn't really get any footage from there today. We did get to see the 155th Mechanized Brigade using some Leopards against the Russians. This is Ukrainian. Now, if y'all asked me to tell y'all what this meant, I'd actually be pretty hard-pressed. Like, I know Ukrainian to some extent, but not to the degree that I know Russian. And I'm actually trying to work on fixing that right now by learning some Ukrainian, so that way I can tell you all what it says and what they're saying, because we've gotten kind of to that point on Russian. But moving on out of that area and on up into Dnipro, we also were able to confirm that the Russians were heavily hitting Dnipro overnight as well. Take a look. We recorded 4 hits in this clip. Pretty unfortunate to see, and it is confirming the Russians are still conducting heavy attacks on the state of Ukraine. But moving on from that, we are now going to be moving on up into Kyiv to cover the speech from the President of Ukraine, President Volodymyr Zelensky, here on day 1,441 or 2 of the war. And so, without further ado, this one's a pretty lengthy one. Here is the speech. Speech!
Шановні українці, українки, сьогодні весь день роботи після російського удару. Відновлення триває в усіх регіонах, які були зачеплені цим ударом. Значний був удар, рекорд по балістиці, 28 було крилатих ракет і ще 43 ракети різних типів, які заходять саме по балістичній траєкторії. Це можна збивати тільки з таких систем, як Петріот. Складний захист, частину ракет вдалося збити, але не всі, на жаль. Були влучання саме по енергетичним об'єктам. Також росіяни застосували ще 450 дронів. Значна частина з них – шахеди. Найбільш складно після удару у Києві, на Київщині, в Харкові та області, зокрема у місті Лозова. Також в регіонах Центральної України. Це передусім на Дніпровщині, також у Вінницькій області, в частині Чернівецької області. Були удари і протягом дня. І зараз ввечері знову удари. Необхідні наші сили всюди задіяні для відновлення. Важливо, щоб урядовці максимально допомагали обласним та місцевим владам із обладнанням, з резервами. Кожен керівник на місцях повинен бути достатньо швидким. Немає просто часу чекати. Максимально активними треба бути і з партнерами. Усі партнери, які можуть допомагати пакетами підтримки, мають отримати всю необхідну інформацію. І сьогодні в Україні був Марк Рютте, генеральний секретар НАТО. Він також, серед іншого, відвідав розбиту ТЕЦ, розбиту ракетами. Ми домовились, що Марк буде нам допомагати, щоб лідери знали, що відбувається. І що Україну треба підтримати саме зараз. Це стосується, зокрема, ракет для ППО, ракет для Петріотів. Бо ми бачимо, яку тактику обрали росіяни. Вони не економлять засоби ураження. Потрібні нові внески партнерів в програму Pearl, яка дозволяє нам купувати зброю у Америки. Ми домовились з Марком, які країни мають відреагувати і можуть допомогти нам найшвидше. Ми очікуємо на реакцію Сполучених Штатів Америки на російські удари. Це була пропозиція саме Америки на час дипломатії і такої холодної зимової погоди припинити удари по енергетиці. Було прохання особисто від президента Сполучених Штатів. Ми бачимо, що Росія на це прохання відповіла рекордом балістики. Неповних 4 дні минуло з тижня, про які Росію просили. Це говорить і про все інше, що Росія обіцяє чи ще може пообіцяти. Якщо їхнє слово не тримається вже зараз, то чого очікувати далі? Вони брехали і перед цією війною, повномасштабну війну Росія почала, намагаючись обманути всіх навколо про свої наміри і про Україну. І зараз навіть в таких деталях, в таких домовленостях з Америку знову російський обман. Вони не виправні в Москві і хочуть скористатися саме холодом, бо не можуть підкорити нас, Україну, своїми штурмами. Ставка Росії на війну повинна отримати відповідь світу. Конгрес Сполучених Штатів давно працює над новим санкційним законопроектом. Важливо, щоб по ньому був рух. Європейські партнери, і ми говорили про це і з президентом Макроном, і з Урсулою фон дер Ляєн, можуть зробити рішучі кроки щодо російських нафтових танкерів, які заробляють гроші на війну. В Європі потрібні такі ж сильні можливості, які є зараз у Америки, щоб не просто зупиняти танкери, або і не тільки їх зупиняти, які возять нафту для Росії, але щоб конфіскувати і танкери, і нафту. Дуже просимо. Росія повинна відчути тиск, щоб вони виконували прохання партнерів, реально рухались у перемовинах до миру. Поки що тільки від України очікують поступок. Росія повинна піти на поступки і найголовніше з них зупинити агресію. Той, хто війну почав, повинен зробити кроки на деескалацію і зупинку війни. Якщо цього немає, і поки цього немає, кожен російський удар б'є не просто по нашій енергетиці, не просто по наших містах і громадах у мінус 20. Кожен удар б'є і по тих лідерах, які говорять з Росією і отримують від неї у відповідь подальшу війну. У нас постійно під ударами Харків, Запоріжжя, Дніпро, Київ, громади Донеччини, Херсонщини. Сьогодні в Запоріжжі російський дрон убив 2 перехожих просто по вулиці. Їм по 18 років було. Мої співчуття рідним. Війну треба зупиняти, але якщо у світу, у Америки, у Європи немає сили зупинити російські удари, то хто повірить, що є сила гарантувати реальне нерозпалення війни знову? Потрібні кроки, які забезпечать довіру до усього, що відбувається між різними сторонами зараз. Потрібен тиск, щоб у Росії був мотив вкладатись у дипломатію, а не у війну на знищення. Ще одне, я хочу подякувати всім в Україні, хто працює, старається, щоб можна було полегшити умови для людей. Я дякую кожній ремонтній бригаді, всім енергетичним компаніям, державним компаніям, які долучились. Укрзалізниця також допомагає. Нафтогаз формує додаткові бригади. Я дякую вам. Дякую. Важливо, що працюють урядові програми підтримки. 17 мільйонів 800 тисяч українців скористалися зараз програмою зимової підтримки. Стартували програми, які можуть підтримати малий бізнес та ФОПів в цей час. Це, зокрема, програма на обслуговування купівлі генераторів і палива. Тільки за перший день цієї програми сьогодні вже 4 тисячі заявок. Масштабуємо програму з тепловими пакунками і найближчими днями в регіонах, де найскладніше, роздадуть щонайменше 30 тисяч таких пакунків. Стартували і кредити під 0% на купівлю генераторів. Спрацювала програма підтримки найбільш незахищених соціальних груп. 374 тисячі українців отримали допомогу по 6500 гривень. Будуть і інші програми підтримки. Сьогодні обговорили це з прем'єр-міністром України Юлією Свериденко. Всі мають працювати максимально, щоб полегшити людям цей зимовий надзвичайний час. І центральна влада, і влада в регіонах, громади, і бізнеси. Звісно, ми розраховуємо, що партнери не залишаться осторонь. Треба захищати життя. Слава Україні!
Heroem Slava.
And I do have to say that, unfortunately, everyone, we've had a very sad incident before we get into the question segment here. We've been able to hear that someone has been very unhappy with our service here on the show, and I have heard that they have actually wanted the manager. And so, really quickly, Matthew, allow me to go get the manager. What? He says he doesn't like the show? He is smoking great slander against His Majesty's broadcast. Have the man expelled and put in prison.
Excuse me, sir. You've reached the management.
Yes, I don't like the service.
Can I take your complaint down, please?
Yeah. I don't like the service. I don't like the show.
Thanks.
Noted.
That's
it. That's
Bin
all.
it. Put a lid on it.
Send him to His Majesty's prison.
If you've got a problem with the channel, take it to your manager.
Man, I tell you, every night, folks, we get mail. And I gotta tell y'all, it's always something.
Email.
It's time to get some feet. Oh lordy,
that one didn't actually fit. Really,
I was sitting there thinking, I was like, what? I was like, bro, I was like, oh,
not
man.
every night.
Well, everyone, after that, it is time for us to move on into the second segment of the stream, where we get to talk to all of y'all dilly-dilly, and it's time for us to talk about anything and everything that y'all want to talk about, anything and everything that y'all would desire, except for religion, politics, climate change, whether the H.N. Warthog is relevant in modern warfare or not. Outside of those topics, we can talk about anything that y'all would want to, except one other thing. Whether or not you want to say snowflake or TDS, those two topics, those two statements will result in absolute ban because it is tiresome to hear them. We've been hearing them for 4 years and people just don't get it yet. We have no allegiance to anyone in a political party. That's why we criticize them. You should try it sometime. It's quite liberating. But anyways...
If you speak out against your majesty, you'll be going to up the creek in the pen.
You have spoken great slander against His Majesty the President.
He will have to go for 10 years in the slammer because he's not Dodgy Dave for no reason.
Bro, we're going off, man. Bro. But anyways, with that, it is time for us to get on into the questions. And Matthew, let us not keep the channel waiting and longing anymore. Let us get into their questions and see what perchance they would like to speak of or ask us of. And Matthew, what do we have?
All right, so jumping in to our super chat questions, our live chat questions, and our Morse code decoders, we have a lot to cover. Before we get to that, though, I do want to point out something that many people have not heard of. This is a piece of news that we did not cover because it's not something we typically cover here on the stream, but it is something fascinating. On February the 8th, we are going back to the moon. The first manned mission to the moon will be taking place on February the 8th, which is just days away. I don't know why they haven't hyped this up more than they really have, because that's a pretty big deal. It's the first moon mission in 54 years that we're going to be having. So some people will say it's the first time we're going to the moon. Some people will say that it's the second time we're filming the moon mission. It depends on who you ask. Also depends on if they happen to like tinfoil on their heads or not. But I would say this is an interesting thing. Could they take me with them? Is there an extra spot for free on this plane or on this spaceship?
On this plane? Excuse me, do you have a flight attendant? I would like to go to the loo, please. Can I unbuckle my seat? But
I would like to reserve a place on this spaceship.
Wait a minute, there's a Canadian going with us?
That's an American.
No, that's a Canadian. He has a Canadian flag on his uniform. Look.
But you forgot that we're introducing them to the United States. They're not up Alberta.
Oh, of course, they're an overseas territory now, basically meaning they have no rights.
I'm just kidding for somebody that takes that seriously.
Man, someone's about to come in and say, man, I ought to beat your ass. Man, it's going to be like, it's going to be like, bro, we got the Canadians angry. But look, we're bringing a Canadian with us to the moon. That's great. The brothers of the North going to the moon with us. That's pretty cool, actually.
Oh, wait a minute. The Artemis mission got pushed back. Artemis delayed. Let's see if this is true. It is delayed. This was announced 2 hours ago. So they delayed it. Now it's not going to be February the 8th. They delayed it until at least early March because they're claiming there are some things they have to work out. Well, I mean, I guess better to be safe than sorry. I mean, you don't want to have an accident. Obviously, it's a dangerous situation to send people up on a rocket because it could obviously have an issue. So, I guess, interesting. So they pushed it back quite a bit.
Man, you know, I just realized, man, why we're bringing a Canadian with us.
Because they're like the only ones that were left with any sense.
No, it's because we have
Oh.
to negotiate with the aliens, you know, that the conspiracy theorists say that Neil Armstrong talked to while he was on the moon. So he's going to go up there because, you know, Americans don't really have tact these days. They probably go up and say, "We're going to beat your ass, you little weak green imp." So we're bringing up the Canadians so that we can go, "Oh, hello there. What you doing? What you about?" Like, you know, and then sit there and start negotiating with them.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure about the whole negotiating thing. I'm not sure. I'm not sure about that. Honestly, I have a feeling that if ET showed up today or like next year or something, and they said we would like to make a deal, I have a feeling I feel like our government would be tripping head over heel to make a deal. Oh man, honestly, it might be wise to make a deal though, because if they've been lurking around for a while, observing and things like that, apparently they've got good sense. So maybe we might want to make a deal. Maybe we could make a deal where they could like temporarily govern the United States. Maybe if they want to do a little bit of that.
I've heard very questionable things from Zorlak, the destroyer of galaxies. He has stated that he wants to exterminate the American people, but I've also heard that he wants to negotiate and deal make. He told me that deal making is very highly accepted in his society, and I am the maker of deals. So we were going to talk to him about how many Americans can get wiped out, and we'll figure that one out, and we might get some money in return, maybe a Bitcoin farm. But anyway, so with that though, I do have to say this is very interesting to hear that we will be launching a mission to the moon really soon. Hey, you know, that's something kind of peculiar. If I remember correct, Matthew, there was some certain private space company here in America that said that they were going to beat NASA to the moon, and I haven't heard about that lately. Have you?
No, I hadn't really heard about that recently. So I mean, maybe they're working on it, maybe not. It's kind of hard to tell.
I mean, that was
I mean,
like,
it's interesting how they're planning a moon mission again, and Kubrick is long gone.
yeah, you know, that is interesting. Maybe they'll give it over to Steven Spielberg or someone like that. Let's see. Well, let me check this though, because I'm really certain, folks. Um, yeah, looks like. Yeah, actually, this was stated all over the place. Way back in like 2019, there was a certain private space company here in America, and they were saying that they weren't even going to beat NASA to the moon. They were also going to beat NASA to Mars. And so far, I don't even think they've really gotten their little ship, if they call it that, into orbit, really. So seems to me like NASA is still kind of the way to go for space exploration, considering that the Artemis has been in development for a really long time. Forgot to mention that, but it does seem that they are going to be getting back to the moon again. Isn't it kind of crazy, folks, that the only country in the world that has ever gotten anyone to the moon, and we're getting them there for a second time, for a second duration of missions, is the United States? Nobody else has done that yet.
Yeah, that's real crazy. Second time to the moon.
Is there something funny there for you? Is it comedy? Hmm?
I'm just saying that's really crazy that the only country on the planet is going for a second time after all these years, 54 years. That's a good time heading back to the moon.
Oh yes, wonderful time, perfect timing, really. But
I thought NASA's budget just got cut too. How are they sending people to the moon?
I think this was already pretty much like pre-planned. Like this has taken them. They've been scrounging up nickels because the pennies don't exist anymore for years now to try and make this happen. I mean, this has literally been in the works for like 15 years to get this one mission going. So that's pretty interesting. Let's take a look at the Artemis because this is from. Oh, they have that copyrighted music. That's quite scary. But let's see here. I can mute this though. There's the Artemis sitting on the pad.
That is something right there. Look at that.
Oh, dude, and they're using the worm
Can we
logo.
show this? Can we show this?
Well, it's from NASA.
I don't know. I don't know.
Well, we can at least show the image. Look,
You showed the image, yeah.
they have the worm logo.
The worm. Look at that. They haven't updated that logo in a minute.
I actually like that logo. I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is pretty cool, I will say. I like that old style like government like logo. You remember when they used to actually hire like marketing firms to like develop like logo books and stuff for them like back in the day. That's how they like revolutionized like the EPA's logos and like marketing. They actually used to do a whole bunch of stuff about that.
Man.
They're definitely not doing that today. They could give a damn.
Do you know this was all done under Nixon, actually, like all the government rebranding stuff. That's when they hired the designers and they went through and made most of the modern symbology for most government departments. Some of them weren't touched by it, like the Forestry Service, but others were. I'm trying to see where in like which government agencies were the ones that had that. Oh, let's see here.
I think they hired some pretty renowned marketing group to do the rebrand too. It was like one of those groups that does like companies and corporations rebranding and stuff.
Yeah, but these are like the kind of logos that they came up with for like the EPA and NASA and others. I'd actually have to say they're really cool looking. Like they're actually really neat and feel very American. Like something about the logo designs really makes it seem like, wow, this is really American feeling. Like the bureaucracy of the logos. And I mean, they look pretty cool though. What were some other ones rather than NASA and the EPA that got their logos redesigned in the 70s?
I think let's see here, another one. I don't think the FBI did. I don't think
Let's
it
see.
was the Park Service. I think also got their little logos designed too.
Yeah, it
The
wasn't.
FBI hadn't been touched.
Yeah, the FBI's been like that forever. So what would it be? The national parks? I think the national parks one's actually pretty old. Yeah, it is,
Maybe
because see,
so,
this is from the
possible.
50s. Like they just kind of like slightly updated it here and there, but it wasn't anything that was done in the 70s. So I mean, honestly, the national parks one is pretty goated. Like that's a pretty cool looking one.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I can't remember what the other ones were. I know there were some more, but I can't recall it.
Wait a minute. Was it this one? No, that was a modern one actually.
Bruh. Hell no.
Yeah, well, I'm just guessing. You know, like I'm trying to take some pot shots.
Have you seen
at
those
this
new Raptors that they got for ICE, by the way? You saw those Raptor trucks? Like, I will say I like the Raptor trucks, but, take a look at this, like, wrap that they put on this thing. Like, look at this. Look at that. That logo is not even the same logo they really use for their, like, agency, really. Like,
Why does this look
they
like
kinda ruined
something
the
from
Raptor.
Jurassic World? Like, why does this look like, bro, like, I'm not gonna lie, man, the trailer for Jurassic World under it kind of made it click. I'm like, this feels like something they would have, like, for, like, Jurassic World security in the movie, you know?
Yeah, it really looks like a waste of taxpayer dollars, if you ask me.
I kind of like, let's see, what is the other one? It's the, man, I'm trying to think of the one that's like the customs agency or something like that. What's it called?
Borders and Customs, or Border and Customs.
Border and Customs. Let me see if I can pull up their vehicle. Oh, let's see. Vehicles.
Border Patrol, you mean?
No, U.S. Customs and Border Service, or
Oh.
Protection. I actually like these, like with the blue stripe on them. Like that actually kind of looks cool.
Yeah, it kind of does. I kind of like that a little bit.
And then let's see, this is the Border Patrol ones that are a part of U.S. Customs. I think ICE uses that same green thing on the vehicles, if I'm not mistaken.
They're all under Homeland Security.
Yeah, Homeland Security and all that. Like, yeah.
Gotta protect the homeland,
Let's see.
The fatherland.
The Vaterland? Man.
Der Vaterland.
Oh man. Oh jeez. Oh man. You better stop that right now. But let's see here. List of federal agencies. Let's just go through the list because there's got to be some that will come off the top of our head that will be like, oh yeah, that's one of the ones. So let's see here. National Security Council, National Space Council, Homeland Security Council.
I will say, some people are saying, I see insecurities in like these big trucks. I don't really see it as like that. I'll say, like, listen, I'm not one of these people that's like, the loud lifted truck. But if ICE or one of these agencies starts driving lifted trucks with rims and straight pipes on them,
And Carolina
then
Squad.
there might be some insecurities going on there. There definitely might, because that's usually something that usually, like, no offense if you drive like a lifted truck, like, I'm not making a complete generalization, but in my personal experience, usually people that drive lifted trucks with straight pipes and rims on them, it's usually assholes. Like, to be perfectly honest, in my experience, they're usually very loudmouth assholes, but not all the time. I do know a couple of people that were decent people that drove trucks like that, but it's usually a bad sign of very low energy. Let's just put it that way. I'll put it the PG way.
Man, I think this is one of the ones.
I think it could be. It kind of has that look to it.
Yeah.
Was the SSA one of those groups that had their logo changed, the Social Security Administration?
Oh, gee. I don't know. I'm not gonna lie, y'all. I hate the Homeland Security one. Like this, like the eagle looks so goofy in the Homeland Security one, and also the TSA's logo is one of the worst. Like, I'm just gonna be straight up. Like, they ought to redesign both of those logos for both of those departments, because I don't really like them at all. I think they're hideous. But I'm also
Wait a second. Someone in the chat, I gotta address this. Someone said it was B. Foster. He said he'd lose his mind if he's in the South and he doesn't even know. I'm
Bro, we were
literally grew up
from
in the
there.
South my entire life. I grew up in the backest of the backwoods in the South. I'm talking about like the deep South, the South that most people never even see in their life. I grew up there. That's how I know this. Okay, that's how I know this. I have seen these lifted trucks. Okay, they used to be full in our parking lot in our high school. These trucks with these Carolina squats. Also, if you add in some huge ass subwoofers in the back, like like you can really make the truck shake. And also you can add those straight pipes at the back too and make the ground rumble. Because what invigorates you more and gives you more energy to compensate for your deficiencies than straight pipes on a squatted truck?
Man, he's not wrong. Like he's actually spitting facts. We're from the South. I think some people might not know that now because everything says that we're in Salt Lake City, which is true. But we grew up in the South, and we just moved here a couple of months ago, so we're very Southern. Grew up around that all, and I got to be honest with y'all, the lifted trucks and the Carolina squats, with that, like generally you could kind of deduce who was in that truck and what kind of attitude they'd have, and you really wouldn't be wrong most of the time. Sometimes you could be wrong, but most of the times you wouldn't be.
Yeah, let me give you an example, by the way. My assistant principal in middle school was a jackass. I'm not gonna make any bones about it. That guy was a pure jackass. I still remember that guy to this day. He drove a lifted Chevy Silverado with rims on it, and it lifted with a huge lift kit. You could barely step into the truck. It was so high. That's how like high this truck was. It had the wheels like sticking out from the frame and stuff like that. Straight pipes out the back, and he had a decal over the gas area where you filled the truck with gas that said "gas hole," like as a play on asshole, like on the side of it. That was our assistant principal in middle school, by the way. And the guy, he acted like he was just so hard. He was a thug to the core. Like he was having to stunt for the children so bad that he was a tough guy, proven to the kids that he was a tough guy. That's the type of environment that we grew up in, was people acting like that, honestly acting like clowns around kids.
I got him, bro. This no joke, dude. When you were describing him, I was remembering him. This is exactly what he would show up to school like every day. That's what he looked like. Exactly.
Yep, that's him. That's him right there, man. That's it.
Bro, that was that guy. Bro, it just clicked in my head when you were describing him. I was like, I know exactly who you're talking about. He looked just like that, y'all. No joke. Same little, like, beard thing going with the glasses. Same style of glasses. Same haircut. Like, he would do stuff like that, too. Like, I'm not even kidding. Like, this is, like, basically a caricature of that guy.
Man, that dude would literally roam the halls, like acting so ridiculous. Like he would literally roam the halls. And I mean, we're talking about middle schoolers here. We're talking about like kids in like 6th to like 10th grade or like 9th grade or something. So he's like stunning for children. Like he's acting like a thug for children. Sitting there walking the halls like a badass. Like, what you want? What you talking about? It's like, dude, what the hell are you doing? It's like, are you that insecure? You're trying to prove you're like so like hardcore to children? It's like, come on. And this dude was like trouble. Like he's still working, by the way, but he got promoted to principal, believe it or not. In the place we grew up in, that type of behavior gets you promoted to principal instead of getting you fired. It should have gotten him fired, honestly, acting like a fool like that around kids, but it got him promoted.
You could tell the guy like probably had adverse reactions if he came home and dinner wasn't ready or it was burnt, like that kind of a guy. Because the way he would talk to kids, like any kid, including us, it was like he was like a bar bouncer that was dealing with a troublesome customer. He's, hey, you better get going now. And it's like, we're like 12. It's like, what are you talking about? It's like, we're kids. We're all kids. And it's like, and no one would ever like do anything really to act out around the guy. But it basically in the South, anyone who drives a lifted truck, I can generalize for y'all, they're either going to be absolute assholes. They're probably pretty mean, like pretty angry just as a part of existence. And they generally power trip on you if they ever have any ability to, endlessly. You might know of some of those people who you might work around if you're in the South. I mean, you can spot them from a mile away. And I would say that the reason why is because for some reason they never emotionally developed. Something stunted their growth at some point in their life mentally. Or emotionally, and they kind of got stuck doing that for compensation of something. I don't know what it is. I don't even think they know what it is. But a lot of people in the South are kind of like that. One thing I found out here in Utah that is interesting to me is that it's kind of the opposite. Like if people are not happy, they just act unhappy. Like they're not like angry to you. They just seem sad. And I'm like, honestly, that's kind of what I expect from people who are not happy or something. I don't expect them to become violent and pissed off. You know, like that's not really what I would expect. But also, Matthew, getting off of that, I have to say, the Veteran Affairs has one of the most baller government logos I've ever seen.
Yeah, you know, the Veterans Affairs, I think they've gotten a little bit better too. So I think their logo is on par.
Man, this goes hard. No joke. I mean, this is like, I feel like this ought to be the Department of Defense's logo, if anything. I mean, this one's great.
Department of War, you mean?
Department of War. Like
We're a wartime nation. Wartime.
Well, the President of Peace renamed it War because we're all about war. Oh man, I tell you, the irony.
You know, it's a funny thing about war. It's something that you shouldn't wish for. It's because it's bad. But sometimes you have to go to war against the worms. It's the war on worms. That's what they call it.
Man, I'm not gonna lie, man. It's real. It's real. That's real. Like I respect that. That's real. Also, man. This is probably one of the worst government logos ever.
Department of Transportation. Honestly, I can't make the reference on air, but this has a very interesting similarities to something else that was actually involved in something not so great that was uncovered a while back, but I'm not going to mention that on air.
When in the world was this logo designed? This was what the hell? That was the original one?
That is the Beyblade of transportation.
Geschickt lightning in die Deutschen.
Whoa. No, I'm not seeing that in it. I'm not seeing that.
I'm not. Well, what are you seeing in it?
The Beyblade of transportation.
Well, you just said something a second ago that pretty much insinuated that's what you were seeing in it. And I mean, with it in red, white, and black,
totally else.
What are you thinking?
It was something that was uncovered in an FBI investigation, but I'm going to leave it at that.
Let's see. So this government department was formed in 1967. That would have been under Lyndon B. Johnson, in case of y'all are wondering, 58 years ago. And this was the emblem that it started with. I'm not gonna lie. Red.
I know what it is. It's from Star Trek: The Next Generation. It's the Klingon logo.
Oh my God! It is.
Pull it up. It's the Klingon Empire. It's the Klingon. Look at that. It's the Klingon Empire. It's the Department of Transportation moving the House of Moog 1 year at a time.
Man, they about to tell you that story about what the hell was it? Kalis. They're about to tell you about Kalis up in the Department of Transit. Oh my God, that's crazy. That literally is. So I guess Star Trek got the idea for the Klingon emblem off of this because he grabbed like the Star Trek Starfleet emblem from the U.S. Air Force. So I guess he also just got that from the Department of Transportation. I guess.
I don't know. It's an ugly logo. Like it's really honestly ugly. I don't understand it. I don't like it.
I cannot believe it. I think we might be the first people that actually have put the dots together on air anywhere, man. Because I've never thought of that, but that literally is the Department of Transit's logo. It's just a circle around it smaller.
You must have Klingon blood.
When you crash your 18-wheeler, you must die with honor. It's like I don't know why.
You must log your miles with honor.
Here in the Klingon Empire, we live by the original teachings of Kalis. When you drive your truck for 12 hours, you must pull over and take a nap. Whenever you want
you have to make sure that you compete with your transportation company against the House of Duras.
No one ever defeats the House of Duras. Bro, that's Swift in the Klingon world. Bro, the House of Kalis is like Swift or JB Hunt or something like that in the Klingon world. Oh my God, bro, this is insane. I cannot believe that. That literally is what it is. That's who would have ever thought. Who would have ever?
Man, I didn't know the DOT was like that. I didn't know they had that Klingon blood.
Also, man, you know what's even crazier is that the U.S. Coast Guard, which is a military branch, was apparently under the Department of Transportation up until 2003, when it was then transferred to Homeland Security.
That's one of those strange arrangements, kind of like the Department of Energy, like being in charge of all the nuclear, militarization and weapons and stuff like that. It kind of makes sense, but it kind of doesn't at the same time. Now here's the TSA. This is an administration right here that gets a lot of hatred.
Honestly, like, I'm not gonna lie, y'all, the TSA, I think, gets a lot of hatred because they hire assholes at some airports, but Salt Lake City is pretty chill. Like, they have, like, one of the chillest TSAs. Like, every time we've had to go through it, it's pretty calm. But, I'm not gonna lie, man, you know, like, this is the worst logo that they have in the government, in my opinion. Like, this needs a redesign.
Yeah, I can't stand it personally. I just can't stand it.
And it looks so stupid on their uniforms. Like, I'm like, can we redesign that to look cooler? I mean, like I don't really like, I'll be honest with you, I just don't really like the TSA. Like, I don't have anything against the agents who work for it, but I don't like the agency in general and the concept of it. I feel like it's more of like transportation security theater. But I would say still, if we're going to have the TSA, because it's not going away anytime soon, they ought to redesign the logo. It just looks rough. But anyways.
Real quick before we move on, one last thing, and we got to move on to our super chats. Pull the CIA logo. We got to show them the logo.
Oh. Holy moly.
Oh, there it is. Look at that eagle behind a shield with the legend in the middle, because you know the legendary Central Intelligence Agency, United States of America, the blue. You got to appreciate it right here. It's funny they didn't add a waterboard to those.
You know, it's kind of crazy, man. I feel like the guy who always tells us what to say on air has one of these in, like, his wallet.
I don't know who you're talking about.
I'm just playing, everyone. That ain't that. We don't talk to anyone with one of these in their wallet to tell us what to say. We basically say what we want, which I'm really happy about. But what the hell is this?
Oh, that's that new one right there. That's that new one. They zapped all the soul out of it. They're trying to really make it look like it's real.
CIA, operated by BlackRock Investing Group. Oh man, dude, this is the one. This is the one right here that tells you all kinds of interesting stuff. Probably things that. What the hell? Ew. Bruh, some of
Garbo. This looks like something that
the
the mall cops would have on their badges or something.
Isn't this just a variation of that USA logo on, like, the sweaters, but it says CIA instead?
Isn't that what Jeffrey Epstein had embroidered with his own initials on it onto that jacket?
I think, yeah. I think he did.
Yeah, I think it is.
Huh. Peculiar. Like, it's... Oh, red light? Red light.
Are you
means
sure
stuff.
talking about Jeffrey Epstein? Are you sure talking about that? It's just crazy you're talking about that.
It's not like I ran my whole campaign talking about him for a straight year, like crazy. But anyways, it's not like we've been talking about that for 6 years or anything. Everyone, let it go. Let it go already. I mean, come on. But anyways, with that, it is time for us to get on into some questions. So, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so jumping into our super chat questions, our first one here is going to go to none other than Waka Waka What, who puts in a $50 support. And thank you very much, Waka, for that very generous $50 and helping to keep the channel running with that support. And he said, Slov Ukraine. Also, if there's time, discuss the teachings of the A-10 Warthog. They said they prayed to St. Javelin for the LSA's salvation, they say. Bird and blessings upon you all. And may you have that iron in you. Pizza, enchiladas, coffee funds, and filter fund.
Enchilada. I gotta say, I had an enchilada tonight, actually, no joke, and it was really good. And I gotta thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I gotta say that we would talk about the teachings of A10, but sadly, A10 is verboten here on the channel. We cannot speak of A10. A10 starts very big fights, very big arguments. Crazily enough, it starts as big of arguments as domestic politics does, which is crazy. But I do thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, and we will make sure to get coffee and donuts and pizza and enchiladas and coffee filters and everything else thanks to your support. So humongous thanks to you so much once again. I hope that has addressed that incredibly well. And with that, we're on to the next one. And a humongous thanks to you so much once again.
Yes, indeed. And our next one here goes to Mark Ead. Yet again, he throws in a second super chat of the night. And thank you very much, Mark, for that second support. He said, enforcers and enforcerettes, it'd be 2 for Tuesdays. Get one from the chat, gentlemen. LSA from New Zealand in the South.
And thank you so much for the support once again. Mark Ead, an absolute channel legend from New Zealand in the South. Let's drop down on a street view. Whoa. This is very nice. This is quite nice indeed. I have to say, I'm
liking it out here. I'm liking it. Honestly, I like New Zealand. You know what, though? When they do that little Artemis mission and they go to the moon, I actually would like a spot. Like, I wouldn't mind setting up a little spot on the moon and calling that home. Like, I wouldn't mind it.
Matthew, we're patriots. We would never leave the United States of America.
Oh, I'm not leaving the United States. The moon is non-territorial.
Oh, you're right. Loophole. Man,
Oh man, I tell you what. In fact, the laws simply don't exist on the moon. It is what it is, I guess you could say.
man, and who's
I
going
think that's why all these billionaires are trying to go to the moon and stuff so fast, because they're really like they're sort of fed up with the system themselves, and they're just like, I gotta get out of here, and they're spending their money like wild, like crazy, just to see if they can try to do it.
Man, you know what's crazy, man, is that our entire country was founded on people like that. Like, man, this place sucks. I ought to just go over there where no one's at, like, or at least where I think no one's at. And then if people are over there, oh, there's going to be hell to pay. But beyond
There's only a couple of places you could go. I mean, you can go to Antarctica to live down there. I mean, that's basically living on the moon. You can go to North Sentinel Island, but you got to deal with the folks who want to spear you to death. And that's pretty much very few places left that we haven't really explored.
that's honestly kind of sad when you think about it, man. Everything's been explored. Y'all are too late for the age of exploration and too early for the age of space exploration. We all are. Very unfortunate when you think about it. But I do have to say that this part of South New Zealand is gorgeous. I mean, look at this. This is beautiful.
That is, I really like this. This looks like Utah.
It really does, actually. It looks a lot like... Let me show y'all. The back part over here. Let me see if I can drop this down and show y'all. This is a hotter part of the year. Let's go to November 20. Oh, damn. Okay, well, there's the snow on the mountains at least. It looks a lot similar to this, but I will say that it's a lot greener in New Zealand.
Man, this looks just like Utah.
You know, it really does. I mean, it's kind of shocking, really, how close it looks. Like, look at that.
Man, this literally is like identical to Utah.
You know, we are in Utah right now.
What do you mean? Like, oh, you're showing Utah? Like, this is a picture of Utah?
Yeah, this is Heber City.
Oh, dang, man! I thought you were still showing New Zealand.
Bruh.
Why didn't you hear you flip over to this?
I thought you were doing a skit. No joke, man. You were like, wow, this looks just like Utah.
I was looking at this and I was thinking, damn, this is like a spitting image. No wonder the spitting image is the same.
Man, you know what's crazy though, folks, is that this is about, like, from Salt Lake City, this is an hour drive out of the city. You can easily get to this. So you can drive out here into this beauty. It's really something. I mean, it's like crazy because we had nothing like this in Bama. I mean, like, at all. So it's really cool to us because this is the Salt Lake City area. That's right over here. So really cool. But I cannot believe though, Andy, you're like, wow, that looks just like Utah. And we was literally Heber
I didn't hear
City.
you flip over. I saw you primed me to get that wrong too, because you showed that first image of actually in New Zealand and it really looked like Utah. And then you silently jumped to the real Utah and you had me all messed up.
Bro, I wasn't doing that to trip you up. No joke, man. I thought you just knew. I thought you saw me do that. Also, here's another street right here. This is Little Cottonwood Canyon right here. This is a really beautiful spot too. Like, these are crazily enough very quick to get to from the city. It's like maybe a 20-minute drive out here. So very beautiful. Like, it's a wonderful place. A lot like South New Zealand, and I appreciate natural beauty. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again.
There's interestingly some very famous people that live over in Cottonwood Heights and stuff like that. There's some fella who's a pretty well-known singer or rapper or whatever you want to call him. I can't remember the guy's name though, that lives over here. There's actually, I think there's another rapper that lives in another part of the city too. But it's weird. There's a lot of celebrities that have chosen to live here. I understand why, because most people are scared off. It's like, oh, the whole place is Mormon. I'm not going to be good in there. But it's like, it's not really anymore. So, people don't know that. So it's a nice place to live.
And also, folks, another interesting thing is that a lot of the Mormons that exist on paper are not even Mormons anymore. They're like former Mormons, but for census reasons, they're still Mormons. I don't really know how that works exactly, but I'll be honest with y'all. I have only run into maybe 3 practicing Mormons, and 2 of those were doing like the door-to-door mission work stuff. I've never really run into a Mormon out here yet, to be entirely honest with y'all. Which is interesting to me because it really defeats the stereotype that the state gets. But there's a lot of beautiful stuff out here.
Also, by the way, I see people mentioning some guy's name here, and that's not who I was thinking of. People keep saying Young Boy. I'm not sure, not sure who that is, but I just pulled it up. The other guy's name, I don't really like follow this genre of music, but the other guy's name is Post Malone, that apparently lives over in Cottonwood Heights. It's really well known. This other guy, though, I'm trying to figure out who the heck this other guy is that everybody keeps mentioning.
Do you know that
Let's
Post
see here.
Malone was a Minecraft YouTuber before he did like the whole singing thing?
I know. I actually didn't know that.
Yeah, I didn't.
No,
I
I've never
didn't.
heard of this. Never heard of this other guy they're mentioning, by the way. Young Boy Never Broke Again. That's a hell of a name.
Damn, that's a long ass
That's a hell of
name.
a name.
That's a sentence.
That's
Like-
man, that honestly, never broke again. I mean, that's not a bad slogan. That's not a bad slogan. That's yeah, interesting.
Bruh, Blood has an entire sentence as his legal name. Bruh, man, like, bruh, that'd be like someone saying, "What's your name, enforcer?" And I'd be like, "Man, I'm out here enforcing that news on God. I'm about to go to the bank and withdraw all of it." And that's like my name. It's like, okay, it's like that's a sentence though. It's not really a name, but I mean, if Post Malone has a place in Park City, pretty great taste. Really heavily trafficked area. Like there is a lot of traffic in Park City, but it is a cool place. It's pretty neat and it's really nice and high end. So I mean, pretty good taste right there. You know, pretty cool. Also, apparently the benevolent guy lives up here in like Farmington
Yeah.
or something like that.
He does.
That's honestly kind of crazy because we've been like clowning on that for like weeks, and the guy's literally like not too far off like from where we're at. So I
And
mean,
there's a lot of YouTubers that live out here, by the way. Like there's some of them. I don't. Some of them don't actually publicize where they live. I'm not going to try to like out them, but I just know a few, like a couple of them actually live here. Not in Salt Lake City proper, but like outside of it. Like a couple in Provo. There's a couple down in St. George as well that people know pretty well. There is one guy that does publicize where he's at. That guy who does off-road towing. I think it's like. Yeah, I think his name's also Matt. I think it's like Matt's Off-Road Towing or something like that. It's not me, by the way, obviously, but I think he's down toward that area, possibly. I think.
that's
Also, Heavy Sparks, that other guy. I think he's also in Utah or something like that.
oh, that's interesting. Honestly, I didn't know that there was that many people who did YouTube out here. That's kind of wild. You know, there's also something quite interesting is that there's a lot of interesting people like who live in Salt Lake City. Let me pull that up for y'all. Interesting people who live in Salt Lake City. Let's see. List of people. Let me get to the modern ones that are still alive. Like because there's a list of them. There's an endless list of them that are dead. So let me see here. Let's see here. Anyone in this list? Oh, there's Post Malone right here. And then there's Karl Malone, who was a basketball player for Utah Jazz, but Utah Jazz is out of here, so that makes sense. Let's see. Any names that are like really sticking out to you right now, Matthew? Like ones that you're like, oh my god, no way.
Now, I hadn't really heard of many of these people here.
Oh, jeez. What the Apollo 15 lunar module pilot James Irwin is from Salt Lake City?
I guess. I mean, I guess.
Huh. That's kind of crazy.
Oh, Karl Rove. Karl Rove is from here. Wait, for real?
What?
No way. Like,
Wait,
wait a
where?
minute. Go check that. Karl Rove. He's down there near the bottom. He's the strategist, the political fella. Check
What?
that real quick. No way he's from here. Where does it say he's from?
He was born in Denver. But where
So
he moved to Salt Lake
how's it
City in
listed him as Utah?
1965. So when he was 15, he moved here.
Huh, that's interesting. I didn't expect he was living in Salt Lake City at all at any point.
His parents separated when he was 19 years old, and the man whom Rove knew as his father was a geologist. Why in the world did they say that? Like, that's not really his father, though. Like, isn't that his dad?
I think that might be his father-in-law's brother.
Maybe. I don't know. Like, that's kind of a weird way to put that. But let's see. He was encouraged by a teacher to run for class senate. Okay, I don't know why. I thought that for some reason was saying that's a teacher encouraged to run for the federal senate. But that's interesting. Let's see. Who else? Steve Young? I don't know who that is. Brigham Young? No, what? I can't believe that. The second leader of the LDS moved here. Who would have
Hey, and then
ever
the guy that
thought?
started KFC.
No. He's the guy who founded Salt Lake City.
Oh, okay.
Let's see. Who
I
else?
thought he had something to do with KFC.
Former First Lady. Former First Lady of Michigan. Leonore.
That's Romney's wife, isn't it?
That's
Oh, wait a minute, that's
Mitt
not a wife.
Romney's mom.
Excuse me.
That's
Sorry,
interesting.
excuse me.
Let's see. Trying to look for any other interesting names. There's Rit Momney. What the hell is that? Like what the hell is that?
Is that for real?
That is real. That's it, bro. Known as Rit Momney. What the hell, bro? I thought that was Mitt Romney. I was gonna be like, oh, well, there's that guy. But no, that's a totally different dude.
Damn.
Yo, that is dumb as hell. Like, let's see here. Oh, and there's all the references. Oh, let's see. Native born. Let's see. Anyone in here that's interesting? Vernon B. Romney. Doesn't say anything about him being the dad of Mitt Romney, though. And then there's a couple of presidents of the Church of LDS. So,
is there a member of the family called C.D. Romney?
Yo, yeah.
I mean, listen, somebody in the Romney family has got to do this. Like, it's a small price to pay. The kid, I mean, CD. I mean, you could simply just choose like a first name that starts with C, a middle name that starts with D. CD Romney could be their initials. Like, that would be legendary.
Also, by the way, Matty, do you know where the first KFC started off?
Right here in Salt Lake City. That's why I was saying that. I thought that guy might have been involved with it.
That makes no sense at all. Kentucky Fried Chicken started in Salt Lake City. That makes no damn sense. But let's see. Elizabeth Smart, a commentator for ABC News, is from here? Crazy. The competition is growing up here. Let's see here. Let's see. Milton Romney. How many damn Romneys are in the state? Here's another one. George Wilkin Romney.
Oh my God, that guy's like a spitting image of Mitt.
Is this his dad?
Is that his father?
Let's see here.
This has got to be his father or something. That dude looks just like him.
That's it. That's his son.
Holy moly. You can definitely tell that's his father. You can definitely tell it's his son, too. That is a close resemblance. This guy is scary, though. This dude, Mitt Romney, looks like the light version of this guy. This dude right here, he's got a little bit of a presence.
This guy kind of looks like, man, he would say something like, we got to overthrow the Islamic Republic now, Mr. Reagan. Like, man, like, I'm not going to lie. He looks like he'd be kind of saying that. But let's see here. And then we got G. Ott Romney. Bro, every damn Romney in the nation is from here. Let's see. It's a Mormon name, so I guess that's why. But let's see. Then there's a couple of NFL players. There's a Miss America finalist. I'm looking for some people who might be really interesting, and I'm not really finding a lot of them. So, anyways, we'll just move on from this. But interesting people are from Salt Lake City. Anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And with that, moving on to our next one here. This one goes to Chris Feilbach, who puts in a $50 support. And thank you very much, Chris, as well, for keeping the channel running. He said, OPSEC bros, my house is on that map.
Damn, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. But I do thank you, Ashley, for the support. That's a pretty good joke right there. I like that one. And so a big thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Marion Deemert, another longtime channel legend who also puts in a $50 support. And thank you very much, Marion, for that support. And she said, keep up the great work and hugs.
And thank you so much for the support. And thank you for the kind words. And big hugs to you as well. And we thank you so much for enjoying this channel and helping us to keep this thing running year after year, month after month, week after week, day after day. A humongous thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a 20 from a burning down that house, who puts in that 20 and said, Iran wanted to take the tanker to get hostages for negotiations.
That's what I'm saying. I would agree with you. I think that's what they were trying to do. And it failed miserably on them. And now they look like a joke. So I got to say, good thing they picked that one because the Navy wasn't going to let that one slip through their fingers. But a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a $20 support from Luke UK. And thank you very much, Luke, all the way from the UK for that $20 support. And we do appreciate that very much. And Enforcer, what say you?
I got to thank you massively, Luke, for that support. You didn't throw in a comment, but we are massively appreciative of it. And we thank you for helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And this one goes to Pleasure Burn, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much, Pleasure Burn, for that support once again. They said, does 1 + 1 equals 6-7?
I think I'm trying to think of that equation in my head right now. I think it does.
How many lights do you see? I see 4 lights.
There are 4 lights.
I was full of Star Trek references tonight.
Oh, the answer is 5. The answer is whatever I want it to be.
Man, those Cardassians or Kardashians or whatever they're called.
Man, those Kardashians and their damn Botox. Like, man, like torturing Picard up there in that room. I tell you something, man. I tell you, man. The Kardashians, they teamed up with that Dominion. And then they started to do some work. And then for some reason, Cisco was like the key to the wormhole people, but he was actually in an insane asylum the whole time, which really kind of cheapens up the whole Star Trek universe, because basically it's just the machinations of some guy in an insane asylum, and that's canon. Like, I don't really get that one, you know? Like, I feel like that was probably the goofiest thing they could have ever done, was been like, oh yeah, the whole Star Trek universe, yeah, it's just the machinations of this insane guy in an insane asylum who thinks he's in the Star Trek world. And I'm like, that was really cheap. Like, they could have just made Cisco like the wormhole god guy and just left it at that, but instead he had to be from an insane asylum too.
Ever since then, I've been thinking, like, it could be real. It could be real. We could just be imagining it, and you're really crazy.
There are 4 lights. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to none other than Daniel Telford. And thank you very much, Daniel, for that $20 support. We do appreciate that. He did not leave a comment, though. But Enforcer, what say you?
I got to thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep this channel running, and we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. And so a humongous thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on and into the next one.
And our next one goes to Chris AC Checker Taxi. And thank you very much, Chris, for that $20 support. And he said, hello from Wenatchee, Washington here. So if memory serves, it wasn't all the hype on the hypersonic missiles on maneuverable hypersonics that could evade anti-missile weapons.
Actually, no. The hype about hypersonics was that they were so fast that no air defense would be able to catch them. Because by the time an air defense missile was able to make it to its end course of flight, which should be impact with the target, or at least proximity fuse near to the target, the hypersonic would have already passed by. That was generally the main sort of a selling point about hypersonics, is that they'd be impervious to air defense. And in reality, they're not. And they're easily shot down by basically any air defense from what we can tell. So honestly, hyped up for no reason. But I gotta say, a huge thanks to you, all the way up there in Washington State, the land of natural beauty, like the North Cascades. Beautiful place. But I do thank you massively for the support and helping this channel to keep it running. And Matthew, I heard your mouth open there for just a second on your microphone. It went, and I was like, what is he about to say? What are you about to say, Matthew? What are you about to say?
I wasn't about to say a word. I was just trying to breathe.
Oh, bro, it literally, like, you could hear your mouth open on the microphone. I was like, I think he's trying to say something right there. And he wasn't. So
man, let me breathe, man. Let me breathe.
Man, I'll let you. I'll let you. But man, you know, I heard, man, that there was some French guy who came to Washington State on vacation, and he got his car stuck on the beach up here in Olympia. And the local said, how can we help you, man? And he said, La Push. And then they founded a town after that incident.
Now that is some lore.
That's deep. What does La Push look like?
Aha, La Push. What is on the wall?
I think that's like, let's see, Inuit type like imagery from the Inuit tribes, I believe.
That's trippy. I feel like I'm seeing 3 bird heads on one, but it's only 2.
Actually, no, you're seeing 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 bird heads.
That's a serpent bird.
Squaw. Man, like it's like
that's that pheasant bird.
Man, that's that pheasant bird.
What was that man's name? Gomer Pyle?
Yeah, yeah, that's that pheasant bird. But man, they haven't taken any modern Street View out here. The last time they did that was 2008. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Dark Galaxy, who puts in a 20 as well. And thank you very much, Dark Galaxy, for keeping the channel running. And they said, thanks for doing the stream every day. And my question is, if Ukraine destroyed 50% of Russia's oil refineries in one big operation, would Russia be unable to continue the war because it destroys their economy?
It would destroy their economy over a period of time, but generally in the long term, the answer would be yes, for sure. If they were able to do that in a singular attack, that would bring the Russian economy down pretty quickly, probably within the next few months after that. But I do thank you massively for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, and I hope that does address that the best I can. And now I have to find out, folks, what Native American tribe is from Washington, because apparently I got that wrong. Native American tribes from Washington. This is not Inuit, and I was thinking that was wrong when I said it. The Yakima Nation. Maybe that's it. Maybe that's it. Maybe? Maybe? It would be the Maka up there. But I'll be honest with y'all, folks. Unfortunately, Native American tribes from the northwestern territories of the United States, or northwestern states, correction. Sorry, I forgot. We haven't federalized the elections yet, so they're not territories yet. They're still states. But right now, I unfortunately don't know a lot about the Native American tribes from these areas of America, because I grew up learning about the ones from the southeast, and that was about it. So it never really crossed my mind to memorize all the Native American tribes of the United States. Sadly, it's interesting though. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Chris Feilbach once again, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much, Chris, for the second support of the night. He said, well, if you can't get your wife going, perhaps your lifted truck will. Actually, probably not.
I'll be honest with you. I just don't know what's the appeal of the lifted truck. Like, honestly, when I get in a car, I want it to be easy. I don't want to have to climb up a freight train step ladder to get in the cab of my truck to drive it, you know? Like, if I want to do that, I go work for the railroads, you know? Like, I work for, like, Norfolk Southern or CSX or Union Pacific or a Genesee and Wyoming company. Not my own truck for personal pleasure. And also, on top of that, how the hell do you even get that in a garage? The thing's taller than a Sherman medium tank from the Second World War. How in the world do you even fit that in the garage? I guess there is no garage for that truck. It just has to stay in the open elements and then degrade everything further as a result. So anyways, I do thank you for the support and help this channel keep it running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a 10 from Robert Krogan. And thank you very much, Robert, as well. He said, good evening, enforcers and LSA.
And LSA, and a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible and keep it running. So a huge thanks to you once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we also have a 10 from Piscator Outdoors, who said, hey, enforcers, my wife and I are back, and great to be with you. And I have an apocalypse-themed question tonight. What is your favorite Fallout Nuclear War apocalypse game? Mine is Fallout 2, and God bless. My favorite one is that Fallout. I think it's 4. It is 4. That's the last one that was out. I like that one because that's the only one I've ever really played. So I enjoyed that one a lot. I finished that whole thing and did it twice actually. But Enforcer, what say you?
We don't talk about Fallout 76. Fallout 4 was the last game, like from the Fallout franchise. I would agree with Matthew on that. Fallout 4 is my favorite, probably because it's the only one I've played, but I really enjoyed that one. I thought it was pretty cool. And I liked Diamond City. I thought that was a really cool concept. But a huge thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep running. I hope that does address that well. And we're on to the next one.
Also, a big shout out to Data Relay, who put in a 10 as well and did not leave a comment, but thank you very much, Data Relay, for that support. And we also have a 10 from Dunkel X, who said, here in South Carolina, we always grew up with the expression, thank God for Mississippi, because when we ranked low in something like reading, we could always count on Mississippi being ranked lower. Alabama greater than Mississippi in the equation, LSA.
You know, that's true. Mississippi really is like basically the free punching bag of the South. It's like, oh, Alabama's 48th in education. Well, thank God for Mississippi. Mississippi is pretty rough, though. I'm not going to lie. I feel sorry for the folks who live in Mississippi because it's rough. I mean, like, there's no part of the state that's good. I would say that maybe the only part is maybe Biloxi, but that's even a stretch. I mean, that's pretty rough to say as well, because Biloxi is only okay because it has casino money. But if it didn't have the casino money, and if there isn't casino money on a block in Biloxi, it is pretty run down as well. So I would have to say, that is a phrase that we know quite good and well, because that was said a lot in Alabama where we were from. So a huge thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And also, we have another generous super chat from Chris AC Checkered Taxi. And he throws in a 50. And thank you very much, Chris, for that second massive support of the night. We appreciate that. He said, using hypersonic glide vehicles, HGVs, or scramjet-powered cruise missiles, they evade radar detection and defenses, navigating with aerodynamic surfaces, thrust vectoring, or skipping on the atmosphere, significantly complicating interception.
I thank you for the support, Chris. And I have heard that about hypersonic glide vehicles. But the thing, though, is that they said about hypersonic missiles in general is that they would go so fast that no radar would be able to detect them. Because a radar pulse would get deflected just from the raw speed was generally the explanation or something along those lines. And even if it was detected on a radar, no interceptor would be able to actually hit and stop a hypersonic. But then that ended up becoming untrue. And that's what I will be entirely honest honest with you, I think most everything hypersonic, or like hypersonic is the gimmick, even hypersonic glide vehicles, I feel like that is all generally hype talk. I feel like that's like the marketing pitch by companies to try and get government contracts to build them. But I don't really feel like that ever pans out in practice. Because the truth is that a hypersonic glide vehicle is basically, especially if it's exo-atmospheric, it may as well just be a normal MIRV at that point, a multiple independent reentry vehicle, because multiple independent reentry vehicles and the reentry vehicles, they get up to exorbitantly high speeds at their terminal phase. They're at like Mach 15 on impact. And that's what I find really kind of like misleading about hypersonic glide vehicles and the like, is that an ICBM in itself is already uninterceptable from what we would know. And a hypersonic glide vehicle is basically just taking that and adding a couple of extra steps, but it ends up with basically the same result, just with an extra gimmick involved. And I mean, hell, I mean, you know, from what we can see with the Oreshnik, which uses some form of a normal MIRV delivery system, its warheads are hitting at high velocities over Mach 10 in both times we've seen it used in both Dnipro and Lviv. And that's why I feel like the hypersonic concept is generally hype talk more than anything, because the ICBMs and IRBMs and their MIRVs and MARVs pretty much already do that without having to add the hypersonic part to it, because it already is hypersonic. But a huge thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. But maybe it's just because I don't understand the technology behind it, and maybe it's because the technology was designed 70 years ago, but I just feel like it's an overhyped system. But I'll look into it a little bit more, and maybe I'm wrong. But a huge thanks to you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Stanley So Manly, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Stanley, for that support. He said, Rocky Balboa may have beat Drago, but his face was a bloody mess at the end. Yo, Adrian, LSA.
You know, I'm not gonna lie, I don't really know how in the world, Rocky Balboa took on a Draco rifle and won. I just never get that. It's like, he beat Draco? How? It's like,
Yo, Adrian.
Listen, Polly, don't ask me to stop being a man. Like, man, yo, man, I did it! But beyond that, a huge thanks to you for the support. And I'd have to say, he was beaten up and bloodied after it, but that's not how it would have gone in real life. I can tell you that. America versus Russia? No contest. But a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have another $10 support from Stanley So Manly, and thank you very much, Stanley, for the second support. He said, enforcers, can you discuss why the United Nations is useless against Putin and his war crimes? And thanks, guys, and you're the best.
There's two reasons, like, to simplify it down to the most basic reasons why, because all the other minutiae doesn't matter. It's really the two big points. They have no enforcement power against Russia, because the UN can't actually enforce anything on its own. And secondly, the Russians are a part of the Permanent Security Council, which only is made up of 5 members. And if any one of those 5 members veto anything, the United Nations can't do anything about it. So if the United Nations wanted to pass a resolution to forcefully stop Russia from fighting the war in Ukraine by pretty much uniting the world against them and threatening them with an armed invasion to stop the war, everyone in the United Nations could agree on that, and if Russia vetoes that, the United Nations, by charter design, can do nothing at that point. And that's the two reasons why the United Nations is completely worthless as far as a global peacekeeping force or a global international law enforcement unit, because there's no actual enforcement power, and there's also no way that they can do anything, really, because anyone they would enforce anything against could just veto the action, and then it's stopped right there before they even get to the trying to conduct any action, when they don't have a military or a force to do that in the first place with. So I hope that does address it the best I can, and a huge thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, we have a 10 from 2 Vikings, and thank you very much, 2 Vikings, for that support as well. They said, what happened to the gun reviews you guys started doing about a year ago?
Well, there was something interesting with that. You see, YouTube changed their terms of services, and that became a lot more complicated to do. So we kind of had to shelve that whole project after we had put a lot of time and effort into it. So that was really the reason why. It literally happened right after we started to get that project off the ground. A lot of the terms and services changed, and then we couldn't do any of that stuff. So, because like a lot of our gun reviews were going to include disassembling the gun And YouTube changed the rules to where you cannot disassemble a gun in any way on a video, like made from that point onwards. And that was literally right after we published our first gun review. So we actually had a P90 video that was done and ready to be uploaded when that happened. And because I took apart the P90 in the video, we then had to scratch the whole thing. So, and then also we had to scratch that from then on because, you know, a big part of the videos was actually kind of showing how the internal mechanisms run. And since they wouldn't allow us to show that, we were like, damn, it's like that kind of defeats our whole video premise. So I hope that does address that well. Sadly, it was a project doomed to fail because of the change of regulation on YouTube. But a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And maybe one day we'll do something like that for Patreon. But if we do, it probably wouldn't be as polished or high effort as it would be for YouTube, because it would probably have to be something we would do as a real side project, like a legitimate side project if we tried to. But a big thanks to you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Sergeant Sagi, who puts in a 9. He said, please enjoy the delightful Kangaro village in New Zealand. It's the Castle Combe equivalent from the UK.
Kangaro? How do you spell that, old boy?
K-A-I-N-G-A-R-O-A.
Kangaro, New Zealand. Well, heavens, let's take a look at this place, shall we? There's a Flaxie and Whale power station here. Heavens, what do we have here? This looks like Northern California.
This looks like the rural areas of Russia.
Siberia, even. Like, it really, I mean, it's something else right there. What is in here? What are these little openings in the forest for? Because there's nothing in them. It's interesting. But I do thank you for the support and letting us take a look at this little place right here. And thank you once again for helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And this one goes to Juke Ever, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much as well. They said instant chills to the artillery playing to the Army song. And yes, first time listening to the intro and it's full. And yes, I'm an Army vet. MOS 88 Mike.
Hey, that's really cool to hear. And if I'm not mistaken, 88 Mike is involved in logistics. Let me make sure. 88 Mike.
That should be a truck
Army
operator,
Transportation Corps. That is Army Logistics. Really cool to hear. And I gotta say, a huge thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep it running. And thank you for enjoying the intro. I put a lot of effort, time, and money into that. And I'm always happy to hear that people enjoy it, because it took a lot of work and a lot of cash, actually, no joke, to get the thing off the ground. And it always makes me happy to hear that people love the intro, because I wanted to be as patriotic as possible and convey my feelings of how proud I am of America, which is not the U.S. government, but is the American people and the idea of the United States of America and its constitutional values. And a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And up next, we have a very generous 50 Australian donation from none other than Ross Nibb, another channel legend. And thank you very much, Ross, for the very generous 50 Australian and also helping to keep the channel running. He said, hello, fellas. Would it be justice if the Ayatollah was sent to The Hague on charges of war crimes and mass murder? If the U.S. invade and pick him up, would they do that, even though the U.S. doesn't recognize the ICC jurisdiction and LSA? Honestly, Ross, I think if they picked up the Ayatollah, I think they would try to charge him here in the United States with something. They would try to find something to charge him with that would actually be something that they would have jurisdiction over in the United States. They would basically do him like Maduro, is what they would essentially try to do. It's just trying to find something to lock him up, because they know that he's a devil, but they got to do something that they have actual jurisdiction over. So they have to pick a crime that fits the situation. So I think they would do that. I don't think they would turn him over, because we don't really have a relationship with the ICC, like you mentioned. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say that it would be great to send him to The Hague, but like we are both saying, like Matthew just said, it's really hard to do that because the U.S. constitutionally cannot recognize a superior legal body to that of the Supreme Court. So we probably would have to try him here in the United States, which is kind of interesting, though, because when you think about it, Matthew, we did try everyone at the end of World War II in the Nuremberg trials, which was an extrajudicial body outside of the U.S. courts, and we accepted their legal jurisdiction.
Yeah, but that was a military tribunal, is what that technically was. So it was like a special body created just for the purpose of prosecuting the former German leadership like that. So it was just for that. So it was not something that was pre-existing. They created it with the United States, I believe the Soviet Union, Great Britain, and France, only to prosecute those officials, and that was it.
Yeah, but I mean that is kind of weird though, because we had the British, the French, the Russians, we had everyone in that tribunal. And for some reason, it's like I don't understand. Like I feel like that would be a court outside of U.S. jurisdiction at that point. Although we kind of agreed to create it, because I believe
Although
we.
that's those aren't U.S. citizens, by the way. The Germans would not be U.S. citizens, so that the whole situation in the ICC would not apply to them. It would only apply to U.S. citizens that we don't recognize it over.
Well, yeah, but doesn't that mean that we could send Khamenei to The Hague then?
I mean, you could, but the U.S. wouldn't be involved in it.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I mean, I don't like. Let me pull up the most severe punishment. Most severe punishment from The Hague. Let's see here. So the worst punishment that The Hague can give out these days is life imprisonment. So I don't know. It kind of depends on what y'all think the punishment that would properly fit the crime. And I would say that the massacre of 30,000 people is deserving of a little bit more, in my opinion, than life imprisonment. I think it is very serving that a punishment similar to that was handed down at Nuremberg would be handed down on Khamenei if he ever did face justice in a U.S. court or an international court for his crimes. Because I mean, it's pretty damn severe. I mean, like there's not really a lot that gets close to what he's given on the orders of his own command to do to his own people. So I think it might be better that
Yeah.
we try him in a U.S. court.
Yeah, also, by the way, if you're a foreign national and you're deemed to be a national security threat to the United States, you could have even worse than that happen to you. You might not get prosecuted at all. You could just get wheeled off to a black site and go missing, and that's the simple end of the story right there. That's also a possibility.
Yeah, I would say that's a fate worse than most things, really, when you think about it. But I saw someone say, yeah, I don't think the death penalty would be right for Khamenei. I don't know. I feel like I know that some people don't really like that idea of say severe punishment like that. But I feel like we shouldn't really deprive jurors of the ability to make that decision if they think that the crime is that heinous. And also on top of that, I mean, the guy did give the orders to shoot and kill 30,000 people in the streets, and they're still getting killed right now in the hundreds daily. I mean, that's such a bad thing when you think about it. Should a life imprisonment just seems less than fitting for that. At least in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, me personally, there's got to be some way. They could just form a military tribunal and try him on the spot if they wanted to. I mean, we could just do that.
Yeah, I would agree. Also, by the way, we do have 15 super chats left, and so we are going to have to unfortunately pick up the pace. But I do hope that does address that well, Ross. And a huge thanks to you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Shauna, who puts in a 5. And thank you, Shauna, for that support. They said, thank you both for the continuous updates. I love staying in the loop, and thanks to y'all.
And thank you so much for the support, and thank you for enjoying our show. We try our best, and we're always happy to know that people really do like it. And so with that, we're on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Paul the Nameless, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much, Paul, for that support. He said, taking the tanker will be like sending a welcome invitation letter to the USA.
I mean, pretty much I think it would be. But fortunately, they weren't able to take it and also take U.S. Citizens and sailors hostage. But a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to a Japanese viewer. That appears to be Japanese right there. This username is in. And $5 support, by the way. And thank you very much for that. And I believe this roughly translates to made in Japan is something, I think. But I don't know the other part. But they said, thanks for this detailed talk. Informative analysis and discussion like this. This is exactly what people need.
And I thank you so much for the support and enjoying the show. All the way from Japan, I'd assume. And I got to thank you massively for really finding the show to be of high quality. We always try our best to have very intelligible discussions here on the channel and also to have good research and news. So a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that us addressed that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And this one goes to Make a Mill, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much for that support. Also, while we're at it, a big shout out to Levi Leaf, who put in a 5 as well. And Napalm, who put in a 5 also. We appreciate all three of you very much for that support. And Enforcer, what say you?
And a big thanks to all of you, the lot of you, for the support. You didn't throw in comments, but we're still massively appreciative, and we thank you greatly for helping this channel to keep on running. So a big thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we're on to the next one.
Also, a big shout out to Chef Danny B, who put in a $40 support. And thank you very much, Chef Danny, for supporting the channel. We do appreciate that. Very generous support. He said, "Good evening, Enforcers. Chef Danny here. And his Super Bowl is going to be big for my business. I'm doing a smoked wing special. And they've already sold 80 pounds. And then got another 100 pounds to sell at $19 a pound, or 6 pounds for $60. LLT, LSA. Honestly, Danny, I'd be getting some of those wings if you were nearby. I would be. Like, really, I would. That sounds good. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would too. That sounds delicious. And I would love to have some wings, I tell you. And so I got to thank you massively for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, Chef Danny B, we wouldn't be able to dream of wings. One day we'll have some wings. But a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that this addressed that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Miss Paula Thomas, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much, Paula, for that support. They said, "What do you think success in the Iran campaign looks like? And is the regime change the only success measure?"
I think at this point it would be, because if the regime remains intact, they're going to continue their nuclear weapons research. There will be no avenging of the death of the 30,000 people who were killed in Iran. And there also will be no stoppage of their missile development programs either. So if the regime exists, we have generally failed at our military objectives. The removal of the Iranian regime is the only thing that will achieve success in most metrics that we're looking for currently. So I hope that has addressed it the best I can, in my opinion. And a big thanks to you once again for support and helping this channel to keep running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Canadian War Crime. Oh, yikes. He puts in a 5. They said, let's see here. Let's see what they say. Uh-oh. I should have known of this username. Let's see here. So sadly, I can't read it off. It gets a little too pointed and political. But with that, though, thank you for the support. We also have a 5 from one Quinlan, who said, "Do you think that the U.S. might go for a 2-for-1, Iran and Syria strikes with all the assets in the region?"
I think we'll probably focus primarily on Iran. I think Syria is more of a significant sideshow to the U.S. government at the moment. And while I would say that before U.S. forces pulled out of the area, we do need to deal with that, they probably will end up not dealing with it at all, and then it'll become a problem later. And then we'll be hearing about how it was a great success that it became a problem and how we're dealing with it so well, I'm sure. But a big thanks to you, though, for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to none other than Doug. And thank you very much, Doug, for that $5 support. He said, "How do you think the U.S. control of NC's pure quartz, the only silica required for all high-end chips, will affect China's strategic thinking toward Taiwan?"
That's a good question. Unfortunately, I actually haven't considered that before. Matthew, what would you think?
I would say this, that China's strategic thinking toward Taiwan, and he's referring to rare earths. That's basically what I think the crux of this question is. There's about to be something the U.S. is going to do that they're currently working on to basically, price fixing is not the right word for it, but it's more like it's like trying to create the OPEC of the rare earths world, I guess you can say. The U.S. is currently working on that right now, and it's designed to counter China's control over the rare earths market. So I think we'll have that situation with rare earths kind of leveled out here shortly, because that's something that we have to have leveled out for national security. So I don't think that will be a major issue, if that does answer the question.
And so I hope that does answer that well. Unfortunately, I haven't looked much into silica products and silica resource production. So unfortunately, I don't think I'm well-versed to answer that question. But I think Matthew answered that better than I could. So a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And this one goes to Point of Guinness, who puts in a 5. He said, "I've been taking a break from the war news and stuff, and the doom and the gloom and everything that comes with it, and hope all is well, and with you both, and glory to Ukraine, LSA."
And a big thanks to you for the support. And thank you for the kind words. And, you know, the world is a very turbulent place, but one thing I always say is don't let it bother you, folks. it is what it is. I mean, there's only so much that we can control. And honestly, if you kind of look at it and take a step back to where you're kind of removed from it, because whatever happens, it's generally out of our control. It becomes wildly fascinating and interesting because you are all living through a historical period. Whether people know it or not yet, y'all will know it when y'all are far older, or if you're older right now, you'll definitely know that it's a historical period because no time has really ever existed in most people's lifetimes like this one right now. And so it's always interesting to pay attention to it, so that way you can always tell folks in the future what it was really like living in those days and seeing it happen when it was happening. But a big thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we've also had a $5 support from JB Najalki. And he said, a quick 5 for the manager. My friend says that Iris Shahid Bagheri is a big threat. I laughed and laughed. Please set him straight. Thank you. And LSA.
No.
And isn't Bagheri deceased?
No, he's talking about the Shahid Bagheri, the drone carrier.
Oh, okay. I got you.
Yeah, that's a joke. I mean, a drone carrier, an old merchant ship being a big threat? Hell no. That thing would get obliterated by some AGM-158s before it could even think of what to do. But I do thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep it running. And I would have to say, if your friend thinks that that's a big threat, I think that they might be sorely amiss there. But a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, by the way, real quick, Jay Murr said, come on, guys, China doesn't control rare earths. China actually is one of the largest rare earths depositories, or I don't think depositories is the right word, but rare earths countries on the planet. They have a huge concentration of various rare earths in their country. So they actually do have a pretty good bit of control over that market because of that reason. But also, he is right. They do control the refined rare earths as well. They refine because they don't have any environmental controls. So they can refine as much as they want. They don't have to worry about polluting the air, the ground, the water, whatever, because they don't have those controls. If you're like the United States, though, we care about not polluting the hell out of everybody. We're not going to just refine like that because there's too many controls in our country just to simply let that run free. So there's a trade-off to everything. I would say I like it the way we're doing it. I don't want to pollute the whole country just to refine some rare earths.
I would say that it's actually a little untrue that they are only the rare earths refiner magnets, because they do also account for 70% of all rare earth mineral production by country, and that's raw ore to be extracted. That's not the refining rate. That's just production of rare earths, and that's it. That's not even rare earth metals. That's just the ores. So they're a major refiner of it, and they're also a major generally extractor of it as well, if you want to put it that way. So the Chinese do pose a significant threat in that regard, but it's always a bit of a miss to completely point out, to miss the point for that a lot of people do, is that to produce most modern electronics, there is a global supply chain involved. Like the viewer just a minute ago was speaking about the silica mines in North Carolina. If it's not for those pure silica mines, everyone in the world would be plumb up, just completely lost to produce modern electronics, because they require that pure silica from North Carolina. So while China may have a monopoly in the rare earths production, we then have the monopoly in the highly refined or high purity silica production, which we could then trump the Chinese with to an extent with that factor involved. And that's
also, by the way, just to say this, China. I see some people disputing what I'm saying. China does have the highest reserves of rare earths at 44 million metric tons. So they are like the highest production country, meaning they refine it, they do what they need to do with the materials, the raw materials, to make it usable. But they also do have the highest reserves of rare earths that are mineable. That's at least according to what I'm reading.
Yeah, so that's a bit of an issue there. But one thing that I do have to say though, folks, so the United States has been blessed with another form of a resource that seems very mundane, but is actually quite prolific, at least for us, which is sand. which I can't really speak for the high quality silica or the sand that comes out of North Carolina, but the United States also is the only country in the world that possesses any high volume of fracking sand, which is a special type of sand used for fracking. And considering that a lot of countries are having to start fracking these days to reach shale deposits and other forms of resources, we could stranglehold the Chinese on fracking expeditions by stopping the exportation of fracking sands to China, because fracking is completely impossible without fracking sand. So there are a lot of resources that we do hold almost absolute monopolies on, where we could also screw the Chinese over if we wanted to, if they wanted to play that game, because global supply chains are truly global, and really no one ever holds an absolute monopoly on one thing to where they can behold the world to their will, because if they try and do that, everyone else is going to whip out their one-time monopoly item or resource and then try and screw them over as well. So luckily we kind of have that going for us, because if the Chinese do something like that, there is more than one way that we can mess them up, economically at least. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, and a big thanks to you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And up next, a big shout out to Plazant, who put in a $3 super chat. And thank you very much, Plazant, as always, for that support. And we do appreciate that. We also have a 2 from 535 Medic, who said the pilot had to take a dump.
Maybe that's why it was squawking at 7,700. I don't think we've ever gotten an answer as to what happened to that plane. I'm sure Indo-PACOM will put out a statement tomorrow, if they ever do, and they'll be like, oh, I had an engine failure or engine difficulty or something like that. Because usually whenever an F-35 has an issue and it catches public attention, usually whatever command was in charge of that area, they do put out a short little press release on what happened. So they might do something like that. And I mean, it's not unheard of to have an aircraft have engine difficulties. Even an aircraft as advanced as the F-35 will eventually have engine troubles or engine difficulties, or it may have been low on fuel, one or the other. But a big thanks to you so much for the support, and how about this channel to keep running. And we are on to the next one.
And we also have a $2 support from Jeremy Vahill. He said, Inshallah, das are the way to the peace in Iran.
Inshallah, we will get Bush, we will get so-and-so while he's already over here, and we will get so-and-so. Cease and desist, okay. But anyways, beyond that, I do thank you for the support. I don't think we're getting anywhere close to peace with Iran. I think it's going to end up in an armed conflict, because that's all the Iranian government at least, knows. But a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a $2 support from Parbeg Potato, who said, hit that like.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And we will make sure to hit that like. And so a big thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we also have a $1 support from Marc-Andre Burnett. And thank you very much, Mark, for that $1 support. And we do appreciate that very, very much. And with that, guess what, folks? That's our last super chat to address. Once again, a huge shout out to everybody who, once again, supports the channel and helps to keep it running night in and night out. It's now time to thank the live chatters as well for being here all night. So jumping right into our Morse code decoders, we had Paul Schultz, Kevin, Mason, Joni Dog, Norm Pritchett, Arabelle Garbo, Her Royal Fluffiness, Coach Cover Terry Simon, Brian Blairstown. They said the Morse says, Iran's pretending like they might negotiate to buy themselves some time. LLT LSA.
And that is the sound of money. Y'all got that Morse code message dead on the nail. That is the same one as Sunday. But y'all did get it correct, and I got to congratulate y'all greatly for that, because it stands true today again. So that's why I didn't change it. I was like, hell, that works. I was like, why even change it? So I hope that does address that the best I can. And also, folks, I just realized I forgot everyone. The big one that we control the world on, and this is one that I just totally forgot about on screwing over China, is that the United States is the largest producer of crude oil on the entire planet. And that is literally the very raw material that you need to basically do anything else. Because without transportation, an economy collapses. So that's a pretty big one that we can hold over China, and also the fact that most of the security assurance sphere in the Middle East is American aligned. We can also control the Chinese by basically depriving them of every form of crude oil that they could purchase except for Russian crude, which would limit their abilities a great deal. So I hope that does address that well, because I was just thinking about that. I was like, oh yeah, we basically control the key to an economy in the first place, which is transportation. So there you go. But anyways, I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, it's time for us folks to get on into the live chats. Sadly, due to time constraints, because we're running overtime right now by about 15 minutes, we'll only be able to gather 3 live chats, and then we'll be rounding this thing on out for the night. And so we're on to the third to last question of the night.
And this one is going to go to none other than Bryce, who said, are we negotiating in good faith, or like the Iranians, is the U.S. also trying to buy more time to get assets in the area?
We're probably doing both. We're probably trying to buy time because we might know that it has a low chance of succeeding. But we also are probably legitimately trying to negotiate because the President of the United States has shown over the past year and a month that if there's ever a deal to be made, even if it's one that wouldn't really make a lot of sense, he'll go for it just because of the whole art of the deal aura that he believes that he has. So he'll go for it if he can. So I think it's both. But I do hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we actually have one more super chat.
And this one goes to Jeremy Vahil yet again, who put in a 5. He said, did you guys answer my statement about the enchilada thing? We did.
Yes, we did. I was trying to think there, but yes, we did. And a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, Jeremy Verhill. And with that, we're on to the second to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Fire Guy, who said, any updates on the testing of the railgun systems or those of the allies that are doing it?
Japan's gotten very far. The U.S. is pretty much stagnated in railgun research, from what I know. But Japan, I believe, actually has something very close to a working railgun at this point. So that's what I know right now. And I might be wrong on that, but I think Japan's the one getting closest to actually having a working system. But I hope that does address it the best I possibly can. And with that, folks, we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who is the lucky last person who threw in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is TS Actual, who said, at what point will the USN start blocking, running, or escorting ships through the Strait of Hormuz in the Persian Gulf?
Probably in the next few days, because the Iranians tried to seize a tanker today. That's pretty much enough of a sign that they're going to start posing risks to allied vessels within that area that will probably start escorting most, if not all of them, through. So I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, folks, we've reached the end of tonight's stream. I have to thank you all so much for watching tonight. It's been truly an incredible night. We've had a peak viewership of 18.5 thousand people. What a number. And 157,000 people have watched the stream before we ended it. We thank you all so much for watching. It's been an absolute honor and a pleasure to be able to run the stream for all of you, and I hope that you've enjoyed it well. We will see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 24 hours of the news from around the world. And of course, we will always be here, listening, watching, and learning of what's going on around the world, much like all of you are. And so with that, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, Haram Slava, long live the Lee Spring Army, and long live the Republic.
And with that, folks, thank you all for joining us once again tonight on another massive night of news. And a huge shout out to the 160,000 plus people that have joined us by the very end of the stream. And we appreciate every single one of you for choosing us as your news source. And we will see you all tomorrow to cover whatever's happening then. And maybe there might be a short war video, maybe not, we'll have to see. But there definitely will be a stream at 10 p.m. Eastern. So be sure to join us once again for the stream tomorrow night. And with that, once again, Slava Ukraine, Herom Slava, get some rest, and good night.